Welcome back, my family. Before we dive into tonight's creepy little journey, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share this with someone who loves a good scare before bed. I would love to know where you are watching from and what time it is for you right now. So drop it down in the comments and hype me up a little on YouTube. Now, get comfortable, dim the lights, and let us step into tonight's story.
If you have ever met a stranger in a parking lot for a good deal, this story is the reason you should stop doing that, especially after what they did outside my house at 3 a.m. You know exactly how it feels. You are sitting in your car under that ugly yellow parking lot light, refreshing the messages, watching for a random number plate to turn in. You tell yourself you are being smart. The deal is too good to pass up, but it is still public, still safe. You bring a friend, you keep the engine running, and you promise yourself you will walk away if anything feels off. I told myself all of that too. I thought I was just buying a used phone from some guy named Mike in the back lot of a donut shop. No big contract, no taxes, just cash and a quick handoff. For the first 10 minutes, it was exactly that. The phone worked. The price was low. They even laughed and told me they were not trying to rob me. The part nobody warns you about is what happens after you drive away. When you pull out of that lot and notice the same headlights in your mirror at every single turn. When you realize the good deal did not end in that parking space, it just followed you home. And when you are standing in your own hallway hours later, barefoot on the carpet, listening to two men on your porch whisper your name through your front door, while your dad is on the other side of it when the first shot goes off. So if you are listening to this in your car, or in your room, or getting ready to meet somebody from an app, stay with me for a few minutes. This is the story of how a cheap phone nearly got my family killed, and how a bullet hole in my front door turned every late-night parking lot into a horror movie I can never turn off. 1.1. The bullet hole I still live with. I can tell you almost everything about my front door without even looking at it. If you stand in the entryway, just far enough back that the mat does not brush your toes, the first thing you notice is the color. It used to be white. Not bright white, not new house white, but that warm, off-white builder's love. The kind that is supposed to hide dirt and fingerprints. After a few years of shoes and hands and grocery bags, it stopped hiding anything. There are faint gray smudges at knee height where we nudge it open with our legs. Darker half-moons where palms push around the knob. A constellation of tiny chips along the bottom edge where it has kissed the threshold 1,000 times. The paint has hairline cracks near the corners, thin as pencil lines, creeping out from the frame like veins. If you press your thumb against the panel in the middle, it gives just the tiniest bit, like a held breath. In the winter, it swells and sticks in the jamb. In the summer, it shrinks and clicks shut too easily, like it is relieved to be closed. When the sun hits it in the afternoon, the color changes. Light sneaks through the side light window and pools on the door in a pale rectangle. You can see every flaw then, the brush strokes from whoever painted it in a hurry. The faint shadow of something that once hung there, a wreath or a decoration that left a ghost circle of cleaner paint. The grain of the wood beneath, printed into the surface like an old fingerprint. If you stand there long enough, you will feel it. The faint draft at the bottom, a thread of cool air that sneaks under and touches your ankles. It carries the smell of whatever the neighborhood is doing. Cut grass in summer, wet leaves in fall, exhaust and cold in the winter. It is such a small thing, the kind of imperfection you promise yourself you will fix one of these weekends, and then never do. All of this would make it just another tired door on a quiet street, in a quiet house, in a place where nothing really happens. Except for the hole. You do not see it right away. Your eyes slide over the handle first, the matte silver knob with a few scratches where rings have scraped it, the deadbolt above it, the faint rub mark where the key sometimes misses in the dark. The hole is next to that, almost shy, tucked into the wood just to the side of the lock, about 2 inches away. It is smaller than people expect when I tell them about it. About the size of a pencil eraser. Clean around the edges, the paint fractured outward in a spider burst of cracks. In some lights, it looks black. In others, it looks like the inside of a seashell, dark but hiding depth. Like if you leaned in far enough, you could see the outside again through the other side of the door. You cannot, of course. You can only see darkness. Wood fibers torn back. A thin halo where the impact bruised the frame, a darker color. If you put your fingertip into it, and I do, more often than I would like to admit, the edges are rough. Not enough to cut you, but enough to remind you that something punched through there at a speed your brain does not like to think about. The door feels solid until that spot, and then suddenly it does not feel solid at all. People always ask me the same question when they hear this story. Why are you still living there? They say it in different ways. Sometimes it is concern. You must be traumatized. How can you sleep there? Sometimes it is judgment. If that were me, I would have moved the next day. As if all it takes to rip up your whole life is one bad night and a somewhat convincing story. I never have an answer that satisfies them. The truth is messy. Money is part of it. Moving is expensive. Houses do not stop charging you just because something terrible happened in the hallway. Part of it is stubbornness too. The idea of letting that night push us out felt like losing a second time. And part of it is that this is just where we live. Our shoes still pile by this door. Our keys still hang on the same hook. Birthdays still happen here. And ordinary Tuesday mornings. And arguments about dishes and whose turn it is to take the trash out. Life did not stop just because a bullet decided to pass through this exact point in space one night. But the house is different now. The way a body is different after a scar. You can pretend it is the same from a distance. Up close, you see where the skin does not quite match. I still catch myself standing in front of that door at odd hours, staring at that little circle like it might change. Sometimes, late at night, when the TV is off and the rest of the house has sunk into that heavy, blanket-thick silence, I turn off the lamp in the entryway and let my eyes adjust to the dark. The outlines of the door blur. The hole disappears. For a moment, I can almost believe it is gone. Then a car passes on the main road a block over. A long, low hiss of tires on asphalt. And the headlights slip across the wall, across the deadbolt, across the hole, catching it just enough to make it shine. And my chest tightens all over again. The sounds are different for me now. I notice the hum of the fridge in the kitchen, the way it clicks on and rumbles, then goes quiet. I hear the faint whoosh of cars that are not even on our street, the distance swell and fade as they crest the hill and vanish. I hear the heater sighing through the vents, the tick of cooling metal somewhere in the walls. And above all that, I hear every car door within a certain radius of this house. It does not matter what time it is. 9 p.m. or 3 in the morning, weekday or weekend. If a car slows down out front and a door closes, my body reacts before my mind does. My heart jumps. My breath pauses. For a heartbeat, I am back there again, in bare feet on this same hallway rug. My father's silhouette in front of this same door. Those same two voices on the other side of the wood. People think the horror started with the gunshot. It did not. The gunshot was just the loudest part. It was the punctuation at the end of a sentence that started much softer. It started with a screen glow in my dark bedroom and a thumbs-up icon next to a stranger's name. It started with a listing for a used phone and a price that felt like a victory. It started with me telling myself a story about how smart I was for finding such a good deal. If you trace the night backwards from this hole, from the splintered paint and the way the wood caves in just enough under your finger, you do not end up at a smoking gun. You end up at a message thread, at a parking lot, at the back seat of my car where my little brother sat and said, "I think they're following us. I look at this door every day. I lock it every night. My hand slides inches from that hole every time I throw the deadbolt, and I feel the memory coil tight in my chest. It is the same door as before, and it is not. The same house, and it is not. The same me, and I am not. This is not where the story starts. This is just where I realized I might die in my own hallway." 1.2. The phone that was falling apart before the bullet hole, before the sirens, before I knew what it felt like to hold my breath and listen for footsteps on my own porch. My biggest problem was that my phone sucked. It did not start out that way. When I first got it, it was shiny and new and fast enough that I could flick from app to app without thinking. It took decent pictures. It held a charge. It did all the things a phone is supposed to do when you are not thinking too hard about it. Then, in slow little stages, it started to fall apart. The screen went first, not all at once, not in some dramatic slow-motion drop onto concrete, just one bad day in the kitchen. Slipped out of my hand, kissed the tile at a weird angle, and left a crack like a lightning bolt from the top right corner down toward the middle. It was not catastrophic, not spiderwebbed across the whole thing, just enough that light caught it if you tilted the phone a certain way. At first I told myself I could live with it. Character, I joked. Battle scars. It did not feel funny when I caught someone staring at it while I was showing them a photo, eyes snagging on the crack before they registered the actual image. Then the battery started acting like it was personally offended by being used. I would leave the house with it at 95%, and by the time I had gone through 2 or 3 texts and a weather check, it would be at 70. If I watched a short video, it would jump down again, skipping whole numbers like it was in a hurry to die. Sometimes it would slide from 30% to 7 in the span of a few minutes, then shut off completely like a fainting Victorian child. The shutdowns were the worst. It happened once on a call with my girlfriend. We were talking about nothing, what she had for lunch, how her manager was a little tyrant with a clipboard. When the line went dead mid-sentence, I pulled the phone away from my ear and stared at the blank black screen. My own reflection warped over it, the crack cutting across my forehead like a scar. The battery had been at 23% the last time I looked. Now it was nothing. I had to sit there and jab the power button 3, 4, 5 times before it decided to light up again, crawling slowly back into life with the logo and the tiny buzz. When it finally turned on, the battery read 1%. No warning, no dignity, just betrayal. It did that kind of thing in front of other people too, like it was trying to humiliate me. Once, during a group chat voice call, I was in the middle of telling a story. Everyone else was just disembodied icons and profile pictures, their voices layered over each other, laughing, talking. I had them for a second, I could feel it, that rare moment when everyone is listening and the timing is right. Then my screen froze. The sound cut out. The app hung, then kicked me out entirely. When I got back in, they had moved on. Someone else was telling a different story. A notification popped up. Connection lost. Please check your network. Like it was my fault. In person, it was worse. My friends would whip out sleek, newer phones with smooth glass and bright screens, and I would unlock mine slowly, praying the fingerprint sensor would work on the first try. Apps stuttered when I opened them. Sometimes my keyboard lagged, and the letters would appear in a frantic clump after I had already moved on. More than once, someone would glance over at my screen and whistle. Dude, how old is that thing? Ancient, I would say, trying to laugh it off, thinking about putting it in a museum. Inside, it did not feel like a joke. It felt like standing in a group photo wearing the only shirt with a stain on it. On top of that, the phone vibrated wrong. It used to have a strong, clear buzz that you could feel through a pocket or across a table. Over time, it turned into this weak little shiver, like a dying fly trapped under plastic. Sometimes it would vibrate without lighting up the screen, a phantom notification that amounted to nothing when I checked. Other times, it would sit there silent and still while messages piled up, then complain all at once with a glitchy, delayed buzz when it was already too late. At night, when I would drop it on the bed, it did not bounce. It landed with a dull, resigned thud, the kind of sound you hear when something has been dropped too many times to be surprised anymore. I told myself I did not care. I was working part-time at a grocery store, lugging boxes and ringing up customers and pretending to smile at people who treated me like part of the conveyor belt. I was taking community college classes, scraping through assignments, trying to save for anything larger than a few $100s. A new phone at full retail price was a ridiculous idea. That was money for rent, for gas, for books, grown-up things. But even grown-ups want to feel normal. It is not really about the brand or the fancy features. Not for me. It was about the tiny thousand social moments the phone wedged its way into. Being the only one whose battery died halfway through a night out. Being the one whose video call quality dropped to grainy blocks. Having to say, sorry, my phone is being stupid, more times than I could count. Every time it failed, I felt a little more behind. Not just technologically, but socially. I never thought I was vain until that stupid rectangle began exposing how much I cared about not looking broken in front of other people. So I started looking. At first, I did what you are supposed to do. I went to the carrier sites, the official stores, the big names. I clicked on models, looked at storage sizes, squinted at price tags. Even with payment plans, it felt like signing a contract with a weight attached. I would sit there adding numbers in my head. Tuition, gas, groceries, insurance. The math never came out in favor of brand new phone. That is when I started scrolling through the other option, the local option. There is an app everyone uses around here for buying and selling used stuff. Furniture, old bikes, baby clothes, dusty treadmills that only ever held laundry. People sell phones too. I had scrolled past them 100 times without really paying attention. One night, lying on my side in the dark, with the charger cable stretched tight from the outlet. My old phone warming my palm like a tired little animal. I opened that app with intent for the first time. The room around me was quiet. My parents' door was closed down the hall. My brother's music had gone silent an hour ago. The only sounds were the faint tick of the clock on my wall and the inconsistent, fading hum of the fridge cycling in the kitchen. The screen lit my face in a pale, bluish glow. Every scroll of my thumb sent shadows sliding along the wall beside my bed, like ripples on water. Listing after listing flicked by, cracked iPhones for way more than they were worth, ancient Androids that were somehow still more expensive than I could justify, photos taken so badly you could barely tell what model you were looking at. I adjusted my grip, hearing the tiny plastic creak of my case. The phone's weak vibration shivered once as some unrelated notification tried to fight for attention, then gave up. I ignored it and kept scrolling. There is a rhythm to that search. You start to skim automatically. Price too high, description too vague, won't ship, cash only, serious buyers. My finger moved like it had its own set of criteria, tapping into years of being online and knowing when something is a scam, when something is trash, when something is actually worth a second look. And then, suddenly it stopped. The listing sat there in the center of the screen, simple and unassuming. Galaxy S10, unlocked, 64 gigabytes, excellent condition, $180, need gone ASAP. The pictures were not great, but they were clear enough. The phone looked clean. No visible cracks, no obvious scratches. The lighting was bad in that way that comes from an actual bedroom lamp, not some stock photo. The account name above it was basic, just a first name and an initial, with a couple of older listings marked as sold months ago. My thumb hovered over the message icon. 180 was still a lot of money for me, but in that late-night quiet, with the broken thing in my hand and the ticking clock on my wall, it looked like an answer, a shortcut, a way to step out of the small daily humiliations without signing my life away to a monthly payment plan. It looked like a blessing. What I did not understand, staring at that little rectangle of hope on my screen, was that it was also a map. That tapping that icon would not just send a message out into the dark to some guy with a phone. It would start drawing a line between his life and mine, plotting a route from his door to my driveway. It was, though I did not know it yet, the first step in drawing the bullseye around my house. 1.3, the chat with Mike S. The listing did not look like the beginning of anything terrible. That is the part that still gets to me. It was almost aggressively normal. At the top of the screen was the username Mike S., no last name, no clever handle, just that. Where some people put profile pictures of their kids or their dog or a blurry selfie, there was just a gray silhouette. The app told me his account was only a few months old. Under that, a short scroll showed 3 older listings marked as sold: an office chair, a set of weights, a pair of headphones. All of them were mundane enough to feel reassuring, like he was a real person who occasionally sold real things. The phone listing itself was simple. 2 photos. The first was a front view of the Galaxy S10 lying on a striped bedsheet. The screen was off, black and reflective, picking up a warped reflection of a ceiling fan. No cracks. The edges looked smooth. The second photo was of the back, the camera strip at the top, the faint curve of glass, no visible chips or weird discolorations. The lighting was a little yellow, like it had been taken with a cheap lamp on, but that made it feel more real to me. Scammers use studio clean photos that look like they were stolen from a tech site. This looked like a guy's bedroom. Under the photos was the text: Samsung Galaxy S10 64 gigabytes, unlocked, excellent condition, no issues, just upgraded, need gone ASAP, $180, cash only. Short, to the point, no emojis, no all caps yelling about how great it was. My thumb hesitated over the message box for a second. It felt like the tiny pause before stepping off a curb, that split second where you decide to put your weight forward or stay where you are. Then I typed, "Hey, is this still available?" Hit send and watched the little spinning icon as the message went out. The soft chime the app makes when you send something is quiet, almost apologetic. A second later, another chime. A reply. "Yeah, it's still available." I glanced at the time. It had barely been 30 seconds. I do not know why that made my stomach flicker. People have their phones on them all the time. I had mine in my hand right then. And yet something about the speed made the conversation feel less like me tossing a question into the void and more like there had already been eyes on the other end, waiting. I pushed that thought away. "Cool," I typed. "Any issues with it? Battery life, screen, anything like that?" The pause felt longer this time, but when I actually looked at the clock, it had only been maybe a minute. In the quiet of my room, time stretched between chimes. The house was so still, I could hear the faint ticking of the clock on the wall, counting out seconds that felt like they were being held. Chime. "Battery's fine, holds a charge good," he wrote. "Screen's clean, no cracks, no water damage, works perfect." The language was a bit clunky, but that made it feel human. I imagined someone 2 streets away, squinting at their own screen, thumb jabbing at letters. "And any scratches or anything?" I asked. "On the screen or back?" Another pause. Another tick, tick, tick. Chime. "Normal use. Might be tiny marks from the case," he replied. "No big scratches. You can check it." The phone vibrated in my hand with each message, that weak, tired little buzz that barely made it rustle against my palm. I could feel my own pulse in my fingers, tapping faster than I was typing. "You have the box or charger?" I added, partly to sound like I knew what I was doing. "Got a charger, no box," he replied. "You can test everything." His answers were short, but confident. Not over-explaining, not overselling. He did not gush about how amazing the phone was, or try to drown me in specs. It was enough to make me want to believe him. Then came the part I was dreading, the money. "Would you take $160? I asked. My thumb hovered over the send button for a second before I committed. The moment it went out, I felt stupid, desperate and stupid. $20 is not that much in the grand scheme of things. But when you are counting every bill in your wallet, it feels like a line you have to at least try to draw. There was a longer silence this time. I watched the typing indicator appear and disappear twice, like he was starting and stopping. The space between chimes felt thick. I could hear the fridge kick off in the kitchen, leaving the house even quieter than before. Chime. "Can't do 160, he wrote. 180 is already low. Got other people asking. Of course you do, I muttered under my breath. It is a line sellers always use. Other people are interested. It pushes you into a corner. Makes you feel like if you do not move now, someone else will swoop in and take what you want. Fear of missing out, distilled into a chat bubble. At the same time, he was not bumping the price up. He was just sticking to what he had listed. That felt fair in a way I hated. I stared at the number on the screen. $180. I thought about my last paycheck, about my rent, about the tank of gas I would need by next week. I thought about the crack on my current phone, the way it had died mid-call with my girlfriend, the way my friends glanced at it and smirked. I told myself it was not vanity. It was not about showing off. It was about not feeling like the one person who could not keep up in a world where everything important seems to run through the same piece of glass. "Okay," I typed finally. "$180 is fine." Chime. "Cool," he replied. "When can you meet?" I asked him where he was located. The app said he was about 6 miles away, but that did not tell me what his side of town looked like. He sent a general area, which turned out to be near a strip of chain restaurants and big box stores I knew well. "Tonight?" I sent, before I could overthink it. "I'm off work and free now." Another pause. Another soft buzz in my hand. "Can you do 10:30? He wrote. "Dunkin' Donuts on Eastwood. Back parking lot. It's less crowded." I read the message twice. 10:30 was late. Not incredibly late, not midnight, not 3 in the morning, but late enough that most of the area would be quiet. The Dunkin' on Eastwood sat at the edge of a big lot that shared space with a couple of closed-up shops. The back section was dim, lit by 1 or 2 tall lamps that hummed and flickered when bugs swarmed them in the summer. Back parking lot. Less crowded. A phrase like that should have been a red flag. It did not scream danger. It whispered something softer, the way your reflection looks just slightly wrong in a dark window. Enough to make the hairs on the back of your neck stand up if you are paying attention. I felt a little twinge of unease in my chest. Meeting somewhere public was normal. Meeting somewhere public at night, in the part of the lot no one uses, was less normal. But the rationalizations lined up quickly, one after another, like kids called to the front of the class. It was still a public place. There would still be lights. There would still be cameras pointed at the building. People go to drive-thrus late all the time. Police patrol that stretch of road regularly. I would bring my brother. We would stay in the car if anything felt weird. I told myself these things so fast, I did not have time to listen to the quiet voice underneath them. Besides, this is just how these things work, right? You meet where it is convenient for the seller. You do not spook them by being too demanding. You make it easy, quick, painless. "Yeah, I can do 10:30, I replied. "I'll bring cash." Chime. "All right," he wrote. "See you then, black sedan, I'll park in the back." I stared at that last sentence longer than I meant to. Black sedan. It was such a generic phrase that it almost did not register. Half the cars in the world are some shade of black or gray. It did not narrow anything down. It just gave my brain a shape to expect later. A silhouette to scan for under the buzzing lights. I scrolled back up through the thread one more time. The quick responses. The short, confident answers about the phone. The firm but not aggressive refusal to budge on the price. The suggestion of a specific time and place. Nothing jumped out and screamed, "This is wrong." It all just hummed at a low, constant frequency of slightly off. The clock on my wall ticked on. The blue glow of the screen made my fingers look pale and bone-like as I moved them over the glass. I could have closed the app right then, put the phone down, told myself another deal would come along, or that I would figure out the money for a safer option. I could have let the discomfort win. Instead, I typed 2 words. "Sounds good." I hit send. The soft chime rang out in the silence of my room. If I had just closed the app right there, you and I would not be having this conversation. But I typed "sounds good" and hit send. And somewhere out there, in a house I had never seen, 2 men started planning their night around me. 2.1, driving into the quiet. I did not tell my brother about the gunshot, obviously. At that point, there was no gunshot. There was just a listing, a time, and a place. a plan that felt small enough to fold into a single night and forget about later. I knocked on his door with the back of my knuckles. The muffled sound of a video game paused mid-explosion on the other side. "What?" he called. "Come with me," I said, leaning against the frame. "I'm going to pick up a phone." The door opened a crack, then wider. He was in sweatpants and a t-shirt, hair sticking up in the back, headset around his neck. He squinted at me like I had interrupted something sacred. "You finally giving that fossil a funeral?" he asked, nodding toward the dead phone in my hand. "Something like that," I said. "I found a used one. I want you to come check it out. Make sure I'm not getting scammed." He raised an eyebrow. "Why me?" "Because you know more about phones than I do," I said. "You're the one who sent me half those reviews, remember?" He smirked, leaning into the doorframe the way he always did when he thought he had the upper hand. "So what you're saying is, you need my professional expertise." "What I'm saying," I replied, "is, do you want to come for a ride and judge some stranger's phone with me? Or do you want to sit here and yell at 12-year-olds on the internet?" He considered this like it was a real choice. "Where?" he asked. "Duncan on Eastwood," I said. 10:30. He glanced over my shoulder, past me, toward the cheap digital clock on his nightstand. It was a little after 10. "Late for old people," he said. "You sure you're gonna stay awake?" "Shut up and get your hoodie," I said, but I could not quite keep the nerves out of my voice. On the way down the hall, we passed the living room. The TV painted the walls in flickering blues and grays. My parents were sunk into the couch, that end-of-the-day slump where bodies look like they have melted into the cushions. They were watching one of those crime shows where the lighting is always a little too dramatic and every detective has a tragic backstory. My mom glanced over the back of the couch as we came through. "You're going out?" she asked. "Just to Duncan," I said, keeping my tone light. "Need coffee? Might do some work on my laptop." "At this hour?" my dad asked, without looking away from the screen. On it, a man in a wrinkled suit stared at a whiteboard covered in photos and red string. "Better than falling asleep on my textbook," I said. "He's coming with me." I nodded toward my brother, who lifted a hand in a lazy wave. "Don't stay out too late," my mom said. "You both have class tomorrow." "And don't blow all your money on sugar," my dad added. I gave them a little salute and kept walking. I did not mention the wad of cash folded in my pocket. I did not mention the stranger named Mike. It felt easier to let them picture me yawning over a cup of coffee than standing in a dim parking lot with strangers at the edge of town. Outside, the air hit us in the face like an open freezer. Winter had stripped the trees down to black fingers, reaching up against a low, hazy sky. Our breath came out in pale clouds as we crossed the driveway. The car sat hunched and dull under a thin skin of frost, windows fogged at the edges. The doors creaked in protest when we opened them. The interior smelled faintly of old fast food and the pine-scented air freshener I had hung on the mirror 3 months ago and promptly gone nose-blind to. As I slid into the driver's seat, the cold vinyl grabbed at my jeans. I started the engine. It coughed once, then settled into a rough idle, the steering wheel vibrating under my hands. There is a particular sound to tires rolling over cold asphalt. Less of a hiss, more of a dry, gritty hum. As we pulled away from the house, that sound mixed with the faint whine of the heater fan kicking on, the plastic vents rattling until the air warmed enough to make them expand. Streetlights lined our neighborhood, each casting its own pale orange circle onto the pavement. Sodium vapor bulbs, the kind that makes everything look a little sick, a little older. The houses we passed were mostly dark, save for the occasional square of TV light glowing in a front window. A few porch lights burned steady, little islands of yellow in the blue-black night. My brother slouched in the passenger seat, fiddling with his seatbelt. "So," he said, "how do you know this guy isn't going to murder you and steal your shoes?" I snorted, flicking on the turn signal. The clicking filled the cabin, loud and rhythmic, as we slowed for the stop sign at the end of our street. "That's comforting," I said. "I mean," he continued, "this is exactly how half those stories on YouTube start. I met some guy from the internet in a parking lot at night." He dropped his voice into a mock-serious narrator tone. At first, everything seemed normal. "Thanks for that," I said. "Really helping my anxiety here." "I'm kidding," he said, holding up his hands. "Kind of. You said it's at Dunkin'. That's not so bad. Bright lights, cameras, cops probably sit there sometimes." "Exactly," I said, maybe too fast. "Public place. If it felt sketchy, I'd have told him to meet earlier." The turn signal ticked as I merged onto the main road. The radio came on at a low volume, picking up in the middle of some overplayed song. It blurred into background noise, a forgettable soundtrack under the hum of the engine and the whir of the heater. I turned it down even more. The further we got from our neighborhood, the more the world narrowed down to cones of light. Street after street of closed storefronts slid past. Dark windows, metal gates pulled down, neon signs turned off or flickering on their last legs. A liquor store's open sign buzzed stubbornly in red at the edge of a strip mall, its parking lot empty. We hit a stretch of road lined with car dealerships and fast food chains. Floodlights bathed rows of vehicles in harsh white, making them look like toys. The Dunkin' sat at the end of that row, just before the road curved out toward the highway, its pink and orange sign a soft, inconsistent glow in comparison. "You're really gonna hand some dude almost $200 in cash," my brother said, staring out the side window. "Over a phone you haven't seen yet?" "I've seen pictures," I said, "and I'm bringing you to tell me if he's trying to pass off a brick." "Cool," he said. "So I'll be the one who dies first when he realizes we're not carrying enough money." I shot him a look. He grinned, but there was a thinness to it that made me realize I was not the only one feeling the weight of the night. The tires made that same gritty hum as we turned onto the side street that led into the Dunkin' parking lot. The front section was bright. A handful of cars parked near the entrance. The drive-through lane lit up, a couple of customers visible through the big windows nursing cups under fluorescent lighting. The back lot was a different world. We rounded the corner of the building, and the light dropped away, like someone had turned a dimmer switch. Only one tall lamp stood watch over that side, its bulb flickering every now and then with a faint electric buzz you could almost hear through the closed windows if you listened hard enough. The pavement back there was rougher, patched and cracked, a few weeds pushing up at the edges where the asphalt met the scrubby grass. I pulled into a spot facing the building, leaving a couple of empty spaces between us and the dumpster enclosure. From here, we could see the glow from the front windows bleeding around the corner, but it did not reach us. It felt like we were parked just outside the edge of safety. I shifted into park and killed the headlights, but left the engine running to keep the heater going. The dashboard lights cast a faint, bluish glow over my brother's face. "You sure this is the right place?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, picking up my old phone. The screen's crack caught the dashboard light as I opened the app and tapped into the chat. "Here," I typed, "backlot." The message sent with a soft chime that sounded too bright in the dim car. I watched as the word "delivered" appeared underneath, then shifted to "seen." No reply. We sat there. Time does a strange thing when you are waiting for a stranger. Every second stretches, gets heavier, dragging out into something longer than itself. The heater's low hum filled the silence. My turn signal was off now, but I could still hear the ghost of its earlier ticking in the back of my mind, a phantom metronome. Outside, the pole light flickered, dimmed, then steadied again with a tiny tremor. The only movement was a fast food wrapper skittering across the lot, pushed by a breeze I could not hear but could see in the way it nudged a stray leaf. My brother cleared his throat. "Maybe he's in the front lot?" he suggested. "Maybe he didn't get the message." "He saw it," I said, staring at the screen. The little scene confirmation blinked back at me like an accusation. A minute crawled by, then another. I could feel my pulse in my fingers, tapping against the steering wheel. Every pair of headlights that passed on the road beyond the building made me lift my eyes to the rearview mirror, then drop them again when the vehicle kept going. 5 minutes is not long in real time. It is forever when you are parked in a half-lit lot, money in your pocket, and a phone in your hand that keeps vibrating for no reason you can name. By the time the black sedan finally turned into the lot and rolled slowly into our patch of semi-darkness, my shoulders were already tight, my jaw clenched. Its headlights swept across us like a searchlight, whitening my knuckles on the steering wheel for a second before they clicked off. "Guess that's him," my brother said quietly. I wished, with a sudden, sharp pulse of regret, that the message I had sent 5 minutes earlier had been something else entirely. 2.2. The first impression. The sedan looked like every other car you stop noticing once you have seen 100 of them. Late model, maybe 8 or 10 years old, 4 doors, dark enough that I could not tell if it was black or just a very stubborn gray. No decals, no bumper stickers, no dents that I could see in the half-light. The kind of car you might see parked outside an office building or a grocery store and never think about again. What made it stand out was the way it moved. It turned into the back lot, slow, too slow, easing around the corner like it was testing the ground before committing. The headlights washed across the side of the Duncan building, then swept over us, lighting up the dashboard and my brother's face in a harsh white blast that made him squint and throw up a hand. For a moment, all I could see was the glare. Our world turned into 2 white circles and the warped reflection of my own car in the sedan's glossy hood. Then the headlights clicked off, plunging us back into the softer, sickly glow of the lone pole light overhead. The afterimage burned in my vision for a second, a ghost car hovering behind my eyelids. The sedan rolled into the space across from us and stopped. The engine idled, a low, even rumble you could feel more than hear through the closed windows. "That's not sketchy at all," my brother murmured. I swallowed and forced my hand off the steering wheel. It left a faint imprint where my fingers had been. "Stay here," I said. "If anything feels weird, just call the cops, I know," he said. He tried to sound flippant, but his eyes were already on the sedan, watching. The cold hit me like a wall when I opened my door. The air outside tasted metallic, the way it does when the temperature drops just below freezing. My breath smoked out in front of me as I stepped onto the rough pavement. The first thing I heard was the sound of their doors opening. Not the light click of cheap hinges, but a heavier, deeper thump, like a solid object being moved from one position to another. It was a final sound, the kind that says, "We are here now." 2 men climbed out. The one from the driver's side wore a baseball cap pulled low, the brim shadowing his eyes. He was about my height, maybe a little shorter, with a stocky build and a puffy jacket zipped halfway up. A goatee outlined his mouth, dark against pale skin, and there was a faint, pale line of a scar running diagonally along his chin, disappearing into the stubble. The other, from the passenger side, was taller. A gray hoodie hood was up over his head, the drawstrings hanging loose. His beard was rough, patchier than the other man's, but thick enough to blur the edges of his jaw. His eyes were what I noticed most. They moved constantly. Not in a nervous, twitchy way, but in a steady scan. Lot entrance, dumpster, our car, the angle of the building, the distant line of the road, like he was cataloging exits without thinking about it. Cap Guy, because that is how my brain labeled him instantly, shoved his hands into his jacket pockets and gave me a small, crooked smile as they started walking toward us. I heard my own car door close behind me, that familiar hollow clunk, and then my brother's muffled voice inside, saying something I could not make out. The space between our two vehicles felt suddenly too big, too exposed. "You Mike?" I asked, my voice coming out not quite as steady as I wanted. Cap Guy nodded once. "Yeah," he said. His voice had that flat, local sound, no obvious accent. "You the one from the app?" "Yeah," I said. My hands were cold even in my pockets. "You got the phone?" The taller man, hoodie, lifted his right hand. The phone lay in his palm, screen side up, black and perfectly rectangular against his skin. It looked smaller there than it had in the photos, like the difference between a picture of a dog and seeing it lope down the sidewalk toward you. He held it out to me. As I reached for it, our fingers brushed. His skin was colder than the air, dry, the touch brief but enough to send a little static of discomfort up my arm. Up close, the phone looked fine. The screen was dark but uncracked, smooth under my thumb as I swept it. The edges did not have any obvious dents. The back was clean, the camera strip unbroken. "You can put your SIM in," Hoodie said. His voice was lower than Cap's, more controlled, like he was choosing each word on purpose. I nodded, already fishing my own phone out. Its cracked screen looked almost embarrassed next to the pristine black of the Galaxy. My fingers fumbled slightly at the seam where the SIM tray was, nails scraping until I dug out the tiny hole. "Here," my brother called from the passenger seat, cracking the window just enough to poke his hand through with the paperclip we kept jammed in the cup holder for exactly this purpose. It scraped the glass on its way out with a tiny, squeaking sound that made my teeth clench. "Thanks," I said, taking it. The sound when the SIM tray popped out of the Galaxy was small but crisp. A soft, satisfying click that carried oddly well in the quiet lot. I slid my SIM card out of my old phone and into the new slot, the plastic edges catching once on the metal before settling. The tray slid back in with another quiet click, as though the phone was sighing into place. "Go ahead," Cap said, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. "Boot it up." The screen flashed with the company logo, then the startup swirl. I watched the little animation like it was a ritual. Beside me, the two men stood just close enough that I could feel their presence without them actually touching me. When the home screen came up, it was clean. No personal photos, just a generic wallpaper, a handful of default apps, and some minor pre-installed junk. The battery icon read 82%. I glanced up, met Cap's eyes. He tipped his chin toward it. "Make a call," he said. "Check it." I tapped the phone icon, thumb moving a little more stiffly than usual. The keypad appeared, bright and familiar. I keyed in my brother's number, even though he was 10 feet away. The dial tone rang in my ear. It sounded too loud in the muffled quiet of the lot, the beeping a metronome ticking between my breaths. For a second, I wondered if anyone inside the Dunkin' could hear my heart pounding from where they stood behind the counter. Through the windshield of my car, I saw my brother jump a little, his own dying phone lighting up with my number. He picked up. "Yep," he said. His voice came through the new speaker, clear, no static. "Works." I hung up, then called my girlfriend. The phone rang twice before she answered, voice warm and sleepy at the other end. "Hello?" "Hey," I said. "Just testing something. I'll call you back." "Okay," she said, a question wrapped in a word, but I had already ended the call. The audio had been fine. No echo, no delay. I opened the camera, pointed it at the dingy brick wall of the building, snapped a quick picture. The shutter sound was sharp, artificial, cutting into the stillness. The image was clear. No smears, no weird discoloration. The low light made the colors flat, but that was expected. Behind me, a car drove past on the road, its tires making that same faint hiss. The sound felt far away, like it belonged to a different world of people doing normal, boring things. Everything was working. The tension that had been building since we parked eased just a fraction. It slid down a notch from fear to awareness, still humming in the back of my skull, but less sharp. I turned back to Cap, cradling the phone in my hand like something new I was trying on. "So," I said, "180, right?" He smiled again, that same small, crooked line of mouth. For a second, it looked the same as before. Then something subtle shifted around his eyes. The smile did not reach them this time. "Actually," he said, "we were thinking 220. 2.3. The lie about the cash." For a second, I thought I had misheard him. 220. The number did not match the one I had been repeating to myself all afternoon, the one I had felt in my pocket every time I shifted. 180, 180, 180. My brain did that thing where it tries to catch up by slowing down. The night seemed to press in closer around us. The flickering pole light hummed overhead. The building's brick wall radiated a faint stored chill at my back. 220? I repeated, buying time. Cap nodded, casual. "Yeah, phone's in good shape. 220's still a steal." He said it the way people say things they expect you to accept, not argue with. Hoodie shifted his weight behind him, hands still in his pockets, eyes not on me but somewhere over my shoulder. For a moment, I had the unnerving sense that I was not the only thing they were aware of. I felt my throat tighten. I knew how much cash I had on me. 2 crisp hundreds folded together, then another 50 tucked behind them, plus a stray 20 and a few ones loose in my wallet. I had come prepared in case something felt off, and I needed to sweeten the deal or walk away and try again another time. The idea of handing over more than we had agreed on scraped at something stubborn inside me. It was not just about the extra $40, it was the principle. I had already done the math, already convinced myself that 180 was justifiable, survivable. Pushing that boundary now made me feel less like a buyer and more like a mark. "I thought you said 180, I said. My voice came out a little tighter than before. "I listed it at 180, he said, shrugging. "But now that you've seen it, held it, you know it's worth a little more. Plus gas, time, all that. You get it." There was a logic to it. Twisted but not entirely unreasonable. It was late. He had driven out here. I was standing in front of a phone that worked better than the corpse in my other pocket. The reasonable thing would have been to either agree or walk away. But reason was not what was in control at that moment. A thin, hot thread of pride wound itself around my tongue. I did not want to be the guy who let himself get squeezed at the last second. I did not want to go home and admit I had paid more than we had agreed on. I did not want to feel like they had seen something in me that told them I would cave. So I lied. I only brought 180, I said. The words slipped out smoother than I expected. I even managed to keep my gaze steady as I said them. They were not true. The extra cash sat where I had put it, folded and warm against my leg, very real and very available. But in that moment, I wanted it to be true. I wanted the limitation to be something outside of my control, like I had no choice in the matter. Cap's eyes stayed on my face for a little too long, not in an angry way, not with any obvious menace, just longer than normal, like he was running a scan and comparing the results to something he already knew. Behind him, Hoodie's gaze dropped, almost lazily, to my shoes. Scuffed sneakers, nothing special, then slid up my jeans, the fraying cuff of my jacket sleeve, the car behind me where my brother sat. His eyes lingered on my car maybe a second longer than they needed to, then came back to me. Not dramatic, not obvious, just enough that I felt like I had been measured and added up. "You only brought 180, Cap repeated slowly. I nodded. "Yeah," I said. "That was the price in the listing. I pulled that out, and that's what I have. I mean, I can go to an ATM or something if you want, but..." I let the sentence trail off, implying inconvenience I did not actually feel. The air seemed to thicken for a beat. The Duncan sign buzzed above us, the pink and orange glow bleeding weakly over the top edge of the building like a tired sunrise. In the distance, the drive-through speaker crackled, a distorted voice asking someone what they wanted. The answering mumble was too faint to make out, a ghost conversation riding under ours. Then Cap shrugged. It was a small motion, shoulders lifting and falling, hands still in his pockets. His face relaxed back into that crooked, almost friendly line. "All right," he said. "180's fine. We're not trying to rob you, man." He even laughed a little on the last word, like the idea of robbing me was so absurd it belonged in a different genre entirely. The knot in my chest loosened so quickly it left me lightheaded. I let out a breath I had not realized I was holding, and made a sound that was supposed to be a chuckle but came out more like a weak cough. "Yeah," I said. "Yeah, cool. I appreciate it." I pulled the cash out of my pocket, the bills creasing with a soft crackle in the cold air. My fingers were stiff, and I fumbled them once, almost dropping the stack before getting a better grip. I counted them out loud, partly for his benefit, partly to ground myself. 20s stacking into a small green fan between us. The sound of the paper was crisp, distinct in the quiet. Crinkle, slide, tap. It mingled with the ever-present low hiss of the drive-through speaker around the corner, where someone's order was being totaled up, and the constant insect-like buzz of the neon sign above the front door. Cap took the money and counted it silently, his thumb snapping the corners with practiced flicks. 180. He tucked it smoothly into his jacket pocket when he was done, as if it had always been there. "Cool," he said again. "All good." For a second, everything felt anticlimactic. We had danced around the price, bumped it, shoved it, then set it back where it started. The phone was in my hand. The cash was in his. That should have been the end of the story. "Thanks," I said. I held the phone up slightly, as if toasting with it. "Appreciate the deal." "No problem," he said. "Enjoy it." Hoodie had barely spoken. He just watched, eyes flicking between faces, hands still deep in his sweatshirt pocket. When I glanced his way, He gave me the smallest nod. It was not approving or disapproving, just an acknowledgement, a bookmark. "Take it easy," Cap added, stepping back toward the sedan. "You too," I said, "because that is what you say." I turned and went back to my car. The door handle was cold against my palm. The familiar hollow thump of the door closing behind me sounded different now, like I had just sealed myself into something. My brother was watching me. "Well?" he asked. "Am I getting my tech consult fee or what?" "It's good," I said, holding up the phone. I tried to sound casual. "Everything works," he grinned. "Told you. See? You worry too much." I did not answer. My heart was still moving a little too fast. We watched through the windshield as the two men got back into their car. Their doors shut with those same weighty sounds, one and then the other, echoing briefly in the enclosed space of the lot. The sedan's interior light flicked on for a moment, setting their faces in brief, pale relief. Cap in front, hoodie in the passenger seat, then went dark as the light clicked off. "Let's test it more," my brother said, leaning over toward the glow of the new screen. "Try Wi-Fi, camera, stuff like that." I turned the key in the ignition just enough to power the accessory mode, killing the engine but keeping the electricity flowing. The sudden absence of the motor's rumble made the quiet outside feel bigger. Inside the car, the world shrank to the rectangle of light in my hand. I opened settings, checked storage, flipped through menus, tapped on the Wi-Fi icon just to watch it scan and connect to nothing. My brother reached out occasionally, pointing, his fingertip leaving slight smudges on the glass. "Dude, this is so much nicer than your old one," he said. "You actually joined the current decade." "Thanks," I muttered, but the compliment landed oddly, like it had to travel through cotton before reaching me. A few minutes passed. The heater cooled in the vents, its hum fading. The pole light outside buzzed and flickered, then steadied again. Somewhere, a car pulled around the building toward the drive-thru, its headlights briefly sliding across the far edge of the lot before disappearing. "All right," my brother said eventually, sitting back. "See? Chill. Everything's fine. You got a deal? Nobody died? The end?" "Yeah," I said. I let myself believe it for half a second. Then, for no particular reason, I looked up. The black sedan was still there, engine on. I could see the faint tremor of exhaust from the tailpipe in the cold air. Headlights off. Through the tint of their windshield, I could just make out the shapes of two men still sitting in the front seat, not leaving. 3.1 when they started moving. When we did for a while, I pretended not to see them. I told myself I was just double-checking the phone, being thorough, getting my money's worth. That was easier than acknowledging the way my stomach had tightened when I glanced up and saw the black shape still idling across from us. Inside the car, the air was going stale. The heater had been off long enough that the cold was creeping back in through the seams. The smell of old French fries and spilled soda lingered in the fabric, familiar and faintly sour. The windshield was streaked with the ghosts of past wiper passes, lit from below by the greenish glow of the dashboard. I focused on the rectangle of light in my hand. "Look," my brother said, leaning in again. "Storage is good. Battery's not dropping. You got lucky." He sounded almost impressed. That should have felt good. Instead, every compliment about the phone felt like a reminder that I had tied myself to this deal, to these men, to this moment. I opened the browser, loaded a random site. It worked. I flipped through the apps, messages, gallery, settings. Everything moved smoothly, snappy, and responsive. like it had been waiting all its life for me specifically to use it. Every 30 seconds or so, my eyes drifted up to the rearview mirror. The sedan stayed exactly where it was. No doors opening, no lights flashing, just that dark outline, visible more by absence of light than by anything else. Engine still humming quietly. I could see a faint blur in the front seats where their heads were, but not their faces. "Why are they not leaving?" my brother asked, finally saying the thing I had been trying to avoid putting into words. I forced my shoulders to relax and shrugged like it was nothing. "Maybe they're finishing their coffee," I said. "Counting the money, arguing about what to buy with it, whatever." "In the back lot?" he said, "with the headlights off?" I did not have an answer for that. The space inside the car felt smaller by the second. The dash lights painted everything in a muted wash. His face, my hands, the cheap plastic of the steering wheel worn smooth in the spots I gripped most often. My own reflection hovered ghostly in the dark glass of the windshield, layered over the faint outline of the building and the pole light outside. The new phone suddenly felt heavy. "Let's go," my brother said. There was no joking in his voice now. I hesitated, thumb still resting on the edge of the screen. For half a second, the thought flashed through my head. Ask them if everything's okay. Ask if they need anything else. Then another thought chased it away. Do not give them another excuse to talk to you. "Yeah," I said. "Yeah, okay." I dropped the phone into the cup holder, its glossy back making a soft plastic click against the hard surface. The sound seemed too loud in the cramped space. My fingers found the keys. When I turned them, the engine coughed, then caught, filling the car with a low, familiar rumble. The steering wheel vibrated slightly in my hands. Somewhere under my feet, a loose piece of gravel shifted and crunched as the frame shivered. I shifted the gear from park to reverse. The lever moved with a small, decisive click that I felt more than heard. My foot eased off the brake and onto the gas. The car rolled back, tires grinding softly over the rough patchwork of the back lot. As we backed out of the parking space, the angle changed. The sedan slid out of view in the rear window for a moment, replaced by the blank brick wall of the Duncan. Then, as I straightened the wheel, it reappeared in the rearview mirror. Still there, still dark, still idling. I pulled forward, aiming toward the narrow lane that led around the side of the building back to the main road. My headlights washed over the uneven pavement and the cinder block wall, flat and chalky in the beams. That was when their headlights came back on. The twin beams flared to life behind us, reflected in the mirror as two bright white dots that swallowed the surrounding dark. There was a brief delay, less than a second, between my movement and theirs, but I felt it like a delayed echo. "They're leaving now," my brother said, though it sounded more like a question. "Yeah," I said. "Same time, same way. It's fine." I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears, muffling the small sounds of the car, the engine's steady drone, the faint rattle in the dashboard, the soft thud when we crossed the worn line where the back lot met the smoother asphalt around the front. As we rounded the corner, the brighter lights of the main parking area came back into view. A couple of cars were still in the drive-thru. Someone in a hoodie and shorts, despite the cold, jogged to a car by the front doors, clutching a paper bag. The whole scene looked weirdly normal, like we had been cut away from it and were now reattaching at the edge. In the mirror, the sedan rounded the corner too. Not close, not tailgating, but not hanging back either. Just there. "It's a small town," I said, half to my brother, half to myself. "There's only one way out of here. They're just going the same way we are." "Okay," he said. He did not sound convinced. We rolled up to the exit. The turn signal's tick sounded too loud in the cabin, an artificial metronome. Left for the way home, right for the long way around. I turned left. The sedan turned left. It was still easy to explain if you wanted to. Eastwood was the main road. Most people who went to that Dunkin' would turn left to get back to the rest of town. It would have been weird if they had gone the other way. We drove for a couple of blocks. The radio muttered quietly, forgotten and unintelligible, just a low buzz under the engine. The orange glow of the streetlights came at us in steady intervals, washing the windshield, then sliding past. I told myself the only reason I kept checking the mirrors was safety. That is what they tell you in driver's ed. Check every few seconds. Make sure you know what is around you. It had nothing to do with the way the sedan's headlights stayed at the same distance, not gaining, not falling back. "You're watching them too, right?" my brother asked quietly. "Yeah," I said. The word felt like an admission. I turned onto a side street I did not usually take on the way home. It was not a completely random choice. It would still get us where we needed to go, just with an extra block or two. The kind of turn you make when you see traffic ahead and decide to cut around it. The sedan's headlights followed, swinging smoothly onto the same street a beat after us. The houses here were closer together, their driveways short, their windows mostly dark. A few porch lights glowed with that motion sensor chill. A plastic tricycle lay on its side in one yard, half covered in frost. Our tires hummed over the road, a steady, low vibration. "Maybe they live back here," my brother said. His voice had that tight edge you get when you are trying very hard to believe your own story. "Maybe," I said. We came up on an intersection where I would normally go straight. Home was that way, a few turns and 5 minutes off. The sensible part of my brain wanted to take it, stick to the familiar path, pretend the headlights behind us were just coincidence. Instead, I signaled right. I do not know why that turn felt like a line. Maybe because I had never taken that route home in my life. Maybe because it led into a loop that did not make directional sense if you were just heading toward the highway or the main neighborhoods. It was a choice that did not have a good, logical reason behind it. The tires bumped over a shallow dip as we made the turn. The indicator ticked, stopped. The new street was narrower, tree branches reaching over it like fingers, making the space feel enclosed. In the rearview mirror, the sedan's headlights kept coming. They hit the intersection, paused for less than a breath, then swung right after us. 3.2. The pattern you cannot ignore. There is a moment where coincidence has to sit down and shut up. For me, it was somewhere between the third unnecessary turn and the way my brother stopped trying to joke. The narrow street I had turned onto dead-ended in a T a block ahead. I could have gone left and looped back toward familiar roads. Instead, I flicked the wiper stalk once, like I needed to clear the windshield. The blades scraped dry glass with a squeaking sound that made the hair on my arms rise. "Dude, it's not even raining," my brother said. "I know," I muttered. My hands felt slick on the steering wheel. I rubbed my palms against the textured plastic, then turned right at the T instead of left. This road ran parallel to the one we had just been on, but it did not lead anywhere useful. It curved, doubled back, fed into a little knot of streets that only people who lived there would bother with. Streetlights were further apart, the spaces between them darker, the houses more spread out. In the rearview mirror, the sedan followed, not close enough to be on our bumper, not far enough to be innocent. Just at that same, irritatingly consistent distance where you can tell yourself it is nothing if you really want to. I rolled up to a stop sign. The brakes hissed softly, the car nosing forward as it settled. For a second, I let us sit there longer than necessary. The engine idled. Somewhere behind us, another engine idled too, a low twin hum that vibrated through the cold air. "Go," my brother said quietly. "You're making it weird." "It's already weird," I said, but I eased onto the gas and went straight. Left, right, back around. I started carving a shape through the neighborhood that made less and less sense if your goal was to get anywhere. A half box here, a loop there. The map in my head, the one built on years of driving these streets, frowned at me. "This is dumb. This is wasting gas. This is not how you go home." The sedan stayed behind us. Sometimes its headlights dropped back, shrinking in the mirror until they were small, distant points. My heart would lift a fraction, stupid and hopeful. Then, at the next turn or two, they would grow again, gliding closer, filling more of the rear view with white. My brother stopped craning his neck to check. He did not need to. We could both feel them now, like a third presence in the car. They're following us," he said finally. He was not teasing anymore. His voice had gone flat. "Stop pretending they're not." "I'm not pretending," I said. It came out defensive, even to my own ears. "Then what are you doing?" he shot back. "Taking the scenic route?" I did not answer. Because the right answer, the one everyone in hindsight loves to offer, was simple. Call the police. Pull over somewhere bright and crowded, dial 911, say the words, "I think I'm being followed by the guys I just bought a phone from." Let someone with a badge and a gun come handle it. But the other voice, the quieter, nastier one, kept whispering in my ear. "What if you're wrong? What if they just live this way? What if you call and you're overreacting and they roll their eyes and tell you to go home? What if you make a scene over nothing?" I had spent my entire life trying not to be dramatic, not to be the person who made everything about them. The idea of phoning in some half-formed fear felt indulgent, embarrassing. So I did what a lot of people do when something feels wrong. I delayed. I tested. I tried to make the universe prove it to me beyond a shadow of a doubt before I admitted I might be in real danger. At the next intersection, I flicked on my hazard lights and pulled to the curb. The tick-tick-tick of the hazards filled the car, louder than the turn signal had been, more insistent. Orange reflections pulsed faintly on the street signs and the windows of the nearest house. "What are you doing?" my brother asked. "Checking something," I said. The sedan slowed as it approached. For a heartbeat, its headlights washed over us completely. Then, instead of stopping, it rolled past at a crawling speed. I watched their silhouettes in profile as they went by. Two heads, two sets of shoulders. Neither turned to look at us directly, but I could feel their awareness brush against us like a cold draft. "Okay," my brother said, exhaling. "Okay, maybe they're going somewhere else." The sedan reached the end of the block. For a moment, I thought it would turn and vanish, and I would be left feeling stupid and paranoid. Instead, it went straight through the intersection and disappeared behind a row of houses. "See?" my brother said, a little too quickly. "Maybe they—" "Wait," I said. I watched the gap between those houses in the mirror. The hazard lights ticked on, off. Somewhere close, a dog barked once, sharp and complaining, then stopped. 30 seconds passed, then a minute. My internal war raged quietly in my chest. "Call. Don't call. Turn around. Go home. You're being stupid. You're not being stupid enough." "Let's just go home," my brother said. "Take the normal way." "Yeah," I said. "Yeah, okay? I killed the hazard lights. The sudden absence of their ticking made the silence heavier. I merged back into the empty street and headed toward a bigger road, one I knew would eventually connect us back to something familiar. At the next left, I turned. This time, the move did not feel experimental. It felt like a retreat. The houses thinned out. Fewer trees crowded the road. We were back on one of the main neighborhood arteries, a straight shot that would hit the wider cross street, and then, after a couple more turns, home. I could feel my body trying to settle. My shoulders dropped a little, my jaw unclenched. I told myself the pattern was broken. We hit a stop sign. I eased the brakes on, feeling the car tilt forward slightly. The wiper blades squeaked once more across the dry glass when my fingers brushed the stalk without meaning to. In the distance, beyond the rows of roofs, the faint hum of a busier road floated on the cold air. I checked the rear view out of habit. Empty. No headlights. No sedan. Nothing but darkness and the faint suggestion of a mailbox. "See?" my brother said. "They're gone. They probably thought we were the ones being creepy, driving around their neighborhood and stopping for no reason." "Yeah," I said. The word tasted like relief and doubt mixed together. We drove on. 2 more turns and some straight road later, the neighborhood opened up into a larger intersection with a traffic light. It glowed red as we approached, reflecting in a wet patch on the asphalt where someone's sprinkler must have leaked earlier. I slowed and stopped. The engine idled. The quiet was broken only by the distant whoosh of a car crossing our path, heading somewhere else. For the first time since we left the Dunkin', my hand drifted toward the new phone again. It sat in the cup holder, screen dark, innocently waiting. I thought about picking it up, distracting myself, pretending the last 15 minutes had just been a weird little detour. Then, something in the corner of my eye dragged my attention back to the mirror. Headlights, not from behind us on the same road, but angled, approaching from the cross street on our right, slowing as they neared the intersection. A sedan eased up to the red light, stopping in the lane perpendicular to ours, black, anonymous. Same model, same shape, 2 silhouettes in the front seat. They had not lost us. They had gone around. Cut through side streets I did not know as well, repositioned to meet us here. Like they knew the map of this town better than I did. Like this was not random at all. "Oh my God," my brother said softly. "That's them again." Coincidence was not sitting in the back seat anymore. It was outside, in that car, watching our taillights and waiting to see where we would go next. 3.3. Herded, not just followed. When the light turned green, I did not move right away. For a heartbeat, all I could do was stare at the black sedan in the lane to my right, its windshield a dark mirror. The silhouettes inside did not turn toward us. They did not need to. I could feel their attention like a weight. "Go," my brother said. His voice was thin. "Just go." I pressed the gas. Tires rolled over the patchy asphalt, making that dry, whispering sound that my brain kept insisting sounded wet, like we were driving through something we could not see. The sedan moved too, pulling out when we did, merging into the same direction a car length behind and 1 lane over. The wider road ahead led toward a busier part of town. Strip malls, restaurants, a 24-hour grocery store, people, lights, cameras. It seemed like the safest place to aim for, the closest thing to a crowd at this hour. "If we get near other people, they won't try anything," I said, not sure which of us I was trying to convince. "Yeah," my brother said. "Yeah, public. That's good." We passed a gas station, its canopy lights buzzing down onto empty pumps. The sedan stayed in the lane beside us for a while, hanging back half a car length, close enough that if I glanced left, I could see the suggestion of faces, but not enough to make eye contact without being obvious. Every time I thought about turning my head, my neck muscles locked. At the next intersection, I flicked on my blinker and moved into the right turn lane. I wanted the shopping area, the stretch of chain stores and restaurant signs that made the night feel busy, even when most of them were closed. The sedan's blinker clicked on too. Tires whispered as we turned together, like we were linked by an invisible bar. Ahead, the road widened again, parking lots opening like flat, dark fields on either side. The grocery store's lot was half full. Clusters of cars sat under the bright white lamps, their roofs glinting. A couple of people pushed carts toward their trunks, breath steaming in the cold. I thought about turning in. My hands twitched on the wheel, guiding us toward the entrance to the lot. Then stopped when I realized the sedan had moved forward just enough to sit in the blind spot where I would need to merge. They were not blocking me outright. If I had floored it or slammed the brakes, I could have forced the issue. But their placement was precise. Close enough that drifting into the turn felt risky. Far enough that staying on the main road felt like the safer, more natural choice. I stayed on the main road. "Why didn't you pull in there?" my brother demanded. There were people. "They were right next to us," I said. I didn't want to cut them off. "You don't care about cutting off normal people," he shot back. "You do it all the time." "This is different," I said. "I'm thinking." "Think faster," he muttered. The sedan dropped back a little when traffic slowed ahead. A minivan signaled to turn into a drive-through. A pickup truck ahead of us hesitated, forcing me to tap the brakes. Someone behind us honked, a sharp, impatient sound that jolted through my chest. The road was dry, but in my head, every slight hiss of the tires sounded like water, like we were driving through a shallow layer of something slick and invisible. Halfway down the block, my new phone chimed. The cheerful, synthetic bloop of an Android notification cut through the tension like a rude joke. Both of us jumped. "What was that?" my brother yelped, then realized. "Oh, your phone. Dude, turn that thing on silent." I fumbled for it with one hand, keeping my eyes on the road. The screen lit up, bright and oblivious. A system notification. "Welcome, sign in to get the most out of your device." I almost laughed. The timing was so stupidly perfect it felt like a prank. "Welcome, get the most out of your device." As if this phone had not already dragged me into a situation where the most might include a police report and a funeral. I swiped the notification away without reading the rest and tossed the phone back into the cup holder, face down. "Okay," my brother said, taking a breath. "We need a plan. Go to the police station." My first instinct was to agree. The station was not far. 2 turns, a straight shot past the park, and we would be there. Officers, bright floodlights, a lobby with cameras and benches and people who get paid to deal with creeps in cars. I pictured it. Me pulling into the lot, the sedan trailing behind. Me walking inside, heart pounding, and telling the officer at the desk that a couple of guys who'd sold me a phone for a fair price were following my car around town and doing what exactly? Driving near me? An ugly heat rose in my face just imagining their expression. The polite, practiced nod. The "we'll send a car to take a look." The possibility that they would see the sedan and pull it over, or the possibility they would not. That they would see nothing, that the men would drive casually past, loop around, and now know exactly where my safe place was. "What if they don't believe us?" I said. My voice sounded small over the steady hum of the engine. "Who cares?" my brother snapped. "You only need one person to take you seriously." "And if they don't?" I said. "If they tell us to go home and stop wasting time? Then what? We still have to drive back. They'll still be behind us. Except now they'll know we're scared enough to go to the cops, and the cops don't care." He opened his mouth, then shut it. The silence between us filled with the low drone of both engines, ours and theirs, rolling in parallel down the bright strip of road. The sedan had drifted behind us now, one car back. It was almost worse that way. When they were beside us, I felt like I could at least keep track of them in the corner of my eye. Behind, they were a pair of headlights in the mirror, easily mistaken for any other car if I let my mind wander. I did not let it. At the next intersection, I flicked on my turn signal toward another shopping center. The tick-tick-tick filled the car, precise and relentless. The sedan closed the distance. Not aggressively, not enough to touch our bumper, but just enough that when I started to ease into the turn, I could feel the pressure of them there, a presence that made me second-guess whether I had the space. I hesitated for half a second. The car behind them honked, an irritated blast that snapped my attention back to the road. I missed the turn. "Why didn't you go?" my brother demanded again. "Because they were right there," I said through my teeth. I didn't want to cause an accident. I could hear how weak it sounded, like I was narrating my own avoidance in real time. The sedan eased back another car length, resuming its comfortable distance. Not blocking, not disappearing, just influencing. We passed entrance after entrance. Parking lots full of cars, bright storefronts, people coming in and out of doors with their heads down, collars up. Each time I thought about turning in, the sedan adjusted its position just enough that my instincts told me not to. My path narrowed, options quietly falling away until the safest choice, the easiest path, was simply to keep driving the way they wanted. It took longer than I like to admit for me to realize that was what was happening, that this was not random. We were not just being followed, we were being herded. Once the thought landed, it would not leave. It crawled up the back of my neck and sat there, whispering in my ear. They were not in a hurry to get anywhere. They had no destination but us. The police station idea circled back in my mind. I pictured the street that led there, pictured the turns I would have to take, the signals I would have to give, pictured the sedan sliding into position again and again, a constant shadow. I saw myself pulling into the lot with them right on our tail. I saw myself standing in that lobby trying to explain why I had not called sooner, why I had driven in circles instead, giving them chance after chance to memorize my route, my habits, my fear. Shame, second-guessing, and stubborn pride mixed into a thick, bitter cocktail in the pit of my stomach. I swallowed it down whole. "Forget the station," I said, keeping my eyes on the road. "We just go home. We get there, we get inside, we lock the door. We're fine." "If we make it home," my brother said. The light ahead of us shifted from green to yellow. It was at a major intersection, the kind with multiple lanes and wide, open cross streets. A few cars waited on either side, noses jutting into the box, ready to move. I eased off the gas, feeling the car start to slow. In the rear view, the sedan's headlights glowed steady. My brain did a quick, ugly calculation. If I stopped, we would be trapped. Not completely, not physically. There were still options, turning right on red, backing up, cutting across lanes if I wanted to risk it. But stopping at that light, sitting there while they rolled up behind us, felt like stepping into a corner in a game I did not understand. Ahead, the light flicked to red. The sensible part of me, raised on rules and caution and the constant warning that nothing good happens after midnight, said, "Stop. Wait. Obey the sign. Do not make it worse." The louder part, the one fueled by fear and a sudden reckless clarity, said, "If you stop here, you are giving them exactly what they want, a still target." My foot wavered over the brake. In that sliding moment, with the red glow washing over the hood of our car and the sedan's headlights burning behind us, I realized I was about to do something incredibly stupid. And I also realized I was going to do it anyway. 4, 1. The moment I chose. Stupid over safe. The light went yellow like an accusation. We were still a ways back, not so close that I had to slam the brakes, not so far that I could pretend I had not seen it. That ugly in-between distance where you have to decide in a second whether you are the kind of person who stops or the kind of person who goes. Okay, slow down, my brother said. His hand went up to the dash, bracing, even though I had not done anything yet. I eased my foot toward the brake. In the rearview mirror, the sedan's headlights burned steady, not weaving, not flashing. Just there, solid and patient, like they knew exactly where we were going to end up. The cross street ahead was wider than the others we had hit so far. 4 lanes each way, plus turn lanes. A gas station on one corner, a darkened bank on another, a strip of closed stores, and an all-night pharmacy on the others. The kind of intersection where accidents happen, and everyone blames the weather or the time of night or other drivers. The green bled out of the traffic light and turned to yellow. On the side streets, waiting cars inched forward, noses lifting, engines revving, ready to jump the second their light flipped. My brain did a quick, ugly slideshow. Slide 1, the sedan pulling up behind us at the red, stopping just close enough that their headlights filled our rear window. One of them getting out, walking up along my side, between us and the empty lane, hand in pocket. No witnesses, no one looking. Doors that do not lock fast enough. Slide 2, them pulling up beside us in the next lane, window sliding down. A face turning toward us, illuminated in flashes by the cross traffic as it moves. Mouth moving. Maybe a gun. Maybe nothing. Maybe something worse than both. Slide 3. Us sitting there, trapped in a box of light, while the rest of the world cycles through its routine. We wait for green like good citizens. They wait for an opening. If I stopped, I would be obeying the rules. I would also be giving them time. The distance between us and the light shrank. The yellow burned down from the metal hood like a warning. "Dude, stop," my brother said. His voice jumped an octave. "Just stop." I should have listened. I know that now. Every driving instructor, every cautionary tale, every cop on a safety video would agree with him. Instead, I flicked my turn signal on. The tick-tick-tick of the indicator exploded in the cabin, impossibly loud. My foot, hovering indecisively over the brake, slid back to the gas. The sedan behind us did not change speed. I could feel their engine now. A second vibration layered under ours as we rolled forward. In my mind, I saw them already calculating what they would do if we stopped, whether they would take the chance, whether this was what they had been steering us toward. "Don't," my brother said. This time it sounded more like a plea than an order. "Please, just stop. We can..." I pressed the pedal down. The engine rose in a sudden growl, a rough, climbing sound that filled the car. My body shoved back into the seat as the car surged forward, closing the remaining distance to the line like we were being pulled on a rope. For a second, the world stretched thin. The red light snapped on above us just as we shot under it. To my left, the cars that had been waiting jolted forward, noses jumping, drivers reacting to green. Headlights swung toward us like the white eyes of something surprised and angry. A horn ripped through the night, a deep, blaring sound that felt like it was coming from inside my skull. A pickup in the far lane slammed its brakes, tires screaming, nose dipping so hard the back end lifted. Another car in the near lane slowed, the driver's mouth a furious O in the brief flash where our paths almost intersected. Time stuttered. The lines on the road blurred under the hood. The steering wheel shuddered in my hands. My brother shouted something. My name, a curse I could not tell. The wipers dragged once across the dry glass with a squeal as my fingers clenched around the stalk. Then we were through. The cross traffic streamed behind us now, not in front. The horn faded into the distance, replaced by the rising roar of my own heartbeat backfilling the silence. The car's engine settled down from its desperate, straining pitch into something closer to normal, though the vibrations in my hands made it hard to trust any of it. I did not realize I had been holding my breath until I dragged in air that felt like it belonged to someone else. "You're insane," my brother said. His voice shook. "You're actually insane. We could have—" "I know," I snapped, more harshly than I meant to. "I know." Behind us, the length of intersection yawned like a gap between two worlds. On the far side of it, at the red light we had ignored, the black sedan sat still. They had stopped. Through the mirror, in that weird, stretched-out moment after the surge, I saw their headlights pinned at the line. Other cars were still moving around them, flooding through the crossing at their rightful time. The sedan was caught behind the wave of traffic we had just almost collided with. For the first time since we left the Duncan, there was space between us. Real space. Not just a car length, but an intersection's worth of distance, a violation of rules spread out behind us like a burning bridge. Something bright and hot and ugly flared in my chest. Triumph. It came so fast it made me dizzy. The high of having done something reckless and not been punished immediately for it. The lightning strike realization that I had outmaneuvered them just this once. We had moved while they stayed still. We had acted while they had obeyed. It felt good in a way that made me a little nauseous. I tore my eyes away from the mirror and focused on the road ahead. The next light was still green. The lanes opened up. We had a fleeting, fragile pocket of distance and time. "We lost them," I said, even though I knew the word was too strong, too optimistic. "They're stuck. For now," my brother muttered. His hand was still clamped around the grab handle above the window, knuckles white. "Congratulations, you didn't kill us. Gold star." I let the sarcasm slide off. The adrenaline roaring through me made it hard to feel anything else. It drowned out the quieter voices that might have reminded me that beating someone like this, even for 30 seconds, does not win the game. We had broken one rule of the road. I did not realize yet how many more silent rules I had already broken just by letting them mark our car as something worth following. 4, 2, false safety, and a quiet drive home. The next stretch of road felt like the cool side of a pillow after a nightmare. Green lights lined up for us like they had made some private truce. "You already tempted fate once. We're not going to make you do it again." The traffic thinned out. The glare of other headlights faded. For a few blessed minutes, it was just our car, the empty lanes, and the echo of my own breathing. My brother let go of the grab handle slowly, like his fingers had to unpeel one by one. "You're insane," he said again. But there was less heat in it this time, more exhaustion. "It worked," I said. The words sounded flat the second they left my mouth, like something a kid says after jumping off a roof into a pool and not breaking anything. "That's not the same as it being smart," he muttered. He was right. My hands were still shaking on the wheel. Now that the immediate danger had faded into the rear view, my body was cashing in all the adrenaline it had borrowed. My fingers trembled against the textured plastic, micro tremors that made the steering wheel feel like it was vibrating, even when the car was gliding smooth. My arms ached from how hard I had been gripping, muscles tight from shoulders to elbows. It was the kind of dull ache you get after carrying something heavy for too long without realizing how much strain you were putting on your body. "Do you see them?" I asked, for what felt like the 5th time. My brother twisted in his seat, looking out the back window, then the side mirror, then the rear view. Each time, just the ghost reflections of other lights, distant and harmless. "No," he said. "I don't see them. I haven't seen them since the light." I checked my own mirror, even though I had watched him do it. Paranoia does not outsource well. You always feel like you have to confirm for yourself. Nothing obvious. A pair of headlights way back on the road, too far to make out the shape of the car. A box truck crossing an intersection behind us. No low, dark silhouette hugging our lane. "We should still call somebody," my brother said, quieter now. "Tell the cops what happened. Give them the plate if you remember it." I replayed the sedan in my mind, the way it had slid in and out of my vision all night. The plate number was just a blur. I could recall the general shape of it, the state color, but not the sequence. It felt like trying to hold water in my hands. "What would we even tell them?" I said. "Hey, some guys followed us for a while, then we ran a red light and lost them. No crime, no damage, nothing happened. Trying to shoot someone later starts with nothing happened," he said. He was not wrong, but the thought of calling and trying to explain our little weaving panic route, the illegal light, the fact that I had put us in more danger than they technically had, made my stomach twist. "We're almost home," I said instead. "Let's just get there. We can call if we see anything weird near the house." "So wait until they're literally at our front door?" he snapped. His voice was sharp enough that I flinched. The wheel shifted under my hands a fraction of an inch, bringing the car a little closer to the line before I corrected. "Sorry," he said, almost immediately. "I'm just freaked out." "Me too," I admitted. The words tasted like sand. I am not used to saying them. The radio, forgotten, murmured under the conversation. Some late-night DJ's voice floated through, too low to make out words. Just a human tone trying to sound relaxed between anonymous tracks. I reached out and turned it down even further until it was more a suggestion of sound than anything else. Wind shushed softly around the car as the speed crept up. The roads out here were drier, cleaner, the earlier phantom sensation of driving on something slick fading into normal friction. Every once in a while, a loose coin or pen rattled in the glove compartment over a bump, a faint, uneven clatter that made me jerk my head for a second before I recognized it. My mouth was so dry I could feel my tongue sticking to my teeth. I swallowed, but it did not help much. The little muscles at the corners of my jaw ached from clenching. "Are we telling Mom and Dad?" my brother asked after a minute. I saw a flash of the living room in my mind's eye. them sunk into the couch. Crime show playing. The bullet hole that did not exist yet right by the door. I imagined walking in and telling them their sons had just played car tag with strangers from the internet, complete with a red light stunt. If we tell them, they'll call the police to ask why we didn't call sooner, I said. Then they'll ask why we still went to meet a stranger that late. Then they'll take the car keys, and I'll never hear the end of it. Yeah, he said slowly. But they'll also know. They'll be watching. They'll be ready. I don't want them to be scared in their own house, I said before I could stop myself. The hypocrisy of that hit me half a second later. I was already scared. He was already scared. The house was not a sealed bubble that could keep fear out just because the adults did not know it was at the door. I don't want to be the reason they're scared, I corrected, more honestly. Not unless there's something concrete. Right now it's just us being freaked out by being followed a little bit. A little bit, he repeated, incredulous. You know what I mean? I said. He did. That was the worst part. There is a kind of shared cowardice in not wanting to be the one who changes everything with words. The streets thinned out further as we got closer to our subdivision. Fewer businesses, more houses, driveways with dark cars sleeping in them. A porch light here and there, pools of yellow on concrete. A dog barked once from behind a fence, the sound snapping through the stillness like a twig, then fell silent again. I turned onto our street. The tires made that familiar, comforting sound on the slightly rougher, older pavement. The lampposts here gave off a softer glow than the harsh commercial ones, washing the small yards in a muted halo. Most of the windows were dark. In one house, a TV flickered blue behind thin curtains, shapes moving across the screen in a story that had nothing to do with ours. From out here, nothing looked wrong. No strange cars idling, no silhouettes in the street. Just the quiet, late-night version of home I had driven through 1,000 times. See? I said, exhaling a breath I had not realized I was holding. They're not here. We're fine. For now, he said, but his shoulders had dropped, the tension around his mouth easing just a little. We rolled into our driveway, the front of the car bumping gently as the tires crossed the small lip where concrete met asphalt. I put the car in park. The engine's vibrations calmed, then stilled as I turned the key and everything went quiet. Silence rushed in. No rumble, no radio murmur, just the distant hum of the main road blocks away, the faint buzz of a street lamp, the soft tick-tick-tick of the engine cooling under the hood. We sat there for a few seconds, neither of us moving. The house stood in front of us, dark except for the thin line of light under my parents' bedroom door upstairs. Our front porch looked exactly as it had when we left. Matte, slightly crooked, dead plant still in its pot. The door closed and unaware of what we had just done to make it matter. We're not telling Mom and Dad, my brother said suddenly. It was not a question. It was a decision, a line drawn in the fog between us. I looked at him. His face was pale in the dim dash light, eyes too wide. But there was something stubborn in the set of his jaw that matched the knot in my own chest. No, I said. We're not. We both opened our doors at the same time, stepping out into the cold air like people climbing out of a confession booth and pretending they felt lighter. 4.3. Crossing the threshold. The house looked almost smug when we stepped out of the car. Same trimmed bushes lining the front walk, their branches bare and sharp in the porch light. Same little crack in the concrete near the first step where the ground had settled funny one winter. The motion sensor above the door blinked awake as we moved, flooding the entry with a soft white cone that made the front of the house glow like a stage set. For a second, standing there, it was easy to pretend the last 40 minutes had been something I watched instead of lived. A tense scene that faded to black and then cut back in with this shot. Exterior, night, family home, safe. Behind us, the car sighed as the engine fully let go of its heat. When I had turned the key in the ignition, the vibration in the steering wheel had stopped so abruptly, it felt like the world had paused. Now the metal in the hood ticked as it cooled, tiny random clicks that echoed in the quiet street. Our doors closed with their familiar hollow thumps, one after the other. The sound bounced off the siding, off the neighboring houses, then faded away into the background murmur of the sleeping neighborhood. Our footsteps on the walkway were louder than I remembered. The soles of our shoes scraped over grit and tiny rocks, each step counted by the concrete. My brother's stride was a little off, like he had not quite gotten used to being out of the car yet. Mine probably looked the same. At the door, my hand found the knob automatically. The metal was cold, smooth where dozens of fingers had polished it over the years. I unlocked it, opened it, and the warm air that spilled out smelled like our house. Fabric softener, leftover food, something faintly citrus from whatever candle my mom had burned earlier. The TV was still on. We walked into the living room and found my parents in the exact pose I had pictured. Half asleep on the couch, the dim blue of the television painting their faces. Some crime show was wrapping up its final act. The detective was giving a monologue in a hospital hallway, voice low and earnest, music swelling just enough to tell you how to feel. My mom's eyes flicked open when she heard us. She blinked a couple of times, focusing. "You're back?" she said, voice thick with sleep. "Yeah," I said. "We just got coffee and talked a little. He helped me with some stuff." I jerked my head toward my brother, who nodded like this was a rehearsed line. "How was it?" my dad mumbled, not taking his eyes off the screen. "Get any studying done?" "A little," I said. "Mostly just catching up." "Uh-huh," he said, which could have meant anything. The surreal part was how easy it was to slide back into this scene. 10 minutes ago, I was running a red light with strangers behind us. Now I was standing in my socks on the same living room rug where we had watched game shows and holiday movies and weather reports. The two realities overlapped for a moment, and my brain struggled to hold both. "We're gonna head to bed," my brother said, already edging toward the hallway. "Good night," my mom said. "Don't stay up all night on your phone." The comment landed with an almost physical jolt. I forced a smile. "I won't." We slipped down the hall, our shoulders brushing the walls in a space that suddenly felt narrower. The light from the TV followed us part way, then fell away as we turned the corner. The rest of the house was dim, just a nightlight near the bathroom, a faint glow under the crack of my parents' bedroom door upstairs. My brother peeled off into his room with a quiet "night, man" that did not quite reach his usual volume. I gave him a nod I hoped said, "We're okay. We're home." It's over, even if I did not fully believe it. My room felt smaller than usual when I stepped inside. The familiar layout was all there. Bed unmade, laundry pile in one corner, desk cluttered with notebooks and a couple of empty cups. The blinds were closed, slats tilted just enough to show a thin slice of the dark outside. The alarm clock on my nightstand glowed a soft red, numbers shifting over in a steady, indifferent rhythm. I closed my door halfway, leaving it open just enough to hear the house. The heater kicked on with a soft whoosh through the vents, pushing warm air into the room. Somewhere further away, the TV volume dipped as the credits rolled. A car on the main road a few streets over passed with a low, distant hush. Safe, anonymous noise. I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at the new phone. It lay where I had left it on the comforter, dark and sleek and completely innocent in its appearance. No blood, no cracks, no cursed symbols etched into the glass. Just a device, a tool, a thing I had wanted badly enough to make a series of choices that now sat heavy in my chest. My old phone was already on the nightstand, plugged into the cheap charger that made it buzz when it connected. It looked pathetic next to the new one, its cracked screen catching even the small light from the clock like an accusation. I picked up the Galaxy. The screen woke at my touch, cool blue and white spilling into the room. For a moment, all the shadows shifted. The corners of my posters, the edges of my desk, the folds in my blanket, all of them sharpened into focus around that central glow. I told myself I just wanted to set it up so I would not have to think about it tomorrow. That was half true. The other half was that I needed something to do with my hands, something normal, something that required enough attention to keep my brain from replaying the night in looped fragments. The sedan tucked behind us, the headlights in the mirror, the red light sliding overhead as we blew through it. I started with the basics. Wi-Fi. I punched in the password with a muscle memory that did not have room for fear. The tiny spinning icon as it connected felt like a breath held and released when it succeeded. I signed into my account, thumbs moving over the keyboard, each tap a little act of denial. This is what this phone is for, not something else, not what it brought with it. Contacts came next. A few taps and names started to populate the list. My parents, my brother, my girlfriend, a handful of friends, co-workers, numbers that had been in my life for years. Seeing them appear on this new screen felt like moving pieces from one house to another. Packing them up, unpacking them. Pretending the address was the only thing that changed. I chose a wallpaper, something generic from the default options. A gradient of blues and purples that looked like the sky over some place that was not here. I could have used a picture, but that felt too personal. Too much like admitting this thing was really mine. The heater shut off. The absence of its hum made the house sound larger and emptier. In the distance, the TV clicked off too. The silence that followed had weight. Somewhere blocks away, a car rolled past, tires whispering on pavement. The sound came through my walls as a faint, passing breath. I checked the settings for maybe the third time. Brightness, sound, vibration. I turned the notification volume down to a softer chime, suddenly unable to stand the thought of that cheerful bloop cutting through the dark again. Time blurred. My body, now that it was no longer in motion, had started to register the crash after the adrenaline spike. My arms felt heavy. My legs were led from the knees down. My head ached at the temples in a dull, pressing way. The kind of ache that promises worse if you do not lie down soon. I stretched out on the bed, the Galaxy still in my hand, screen finally dimming as it went to sleep. The room shifted back to its usual soft darkness, the alarm clock's red digits the only glow. My eyes drifted shut. For a few seconds, there was nothing but the rhythm of my own breathing and the familiar creaks of the house settling. The occasional pop in the wall, the tick of the cooling vents, normal night sounds, the nameless background track I had grown up with. Then, from outside, 2 car doors slammed. The sound was so sudden and so loud in the quiet that it sliced through my half-sleep like a knife. Not the soft thunk of a neighbor trying not to wake anyone. These were hard, deliberate closures, one after the other, echoing off the houses on our street. For a heartbeat, I could not move. It was as if the whole night had rewound itself and hit play again. Only this time the scene was not a back parking lot under a flickering lamp. It was right outside my house. 5.1, the sound that made my heart stop. For a half second, I thought I had dreamed it. Then the second slam hit, just a fraction of a beat behind the first, and my whole body snapped awake like someone had plugged me into an outlet. Adrenaline does not feel like the movies make it look. It is not a clean jolt that turns you into a hero. It is a messy flood. My heart punched so hard against my ribs, it felt like it was trying to change addresses. My hands went from pleasantly heavy to electric numb in an instant. Every trace of drowsiness vanished, leaving a sharp, dizzy clarity in its place. I lay there perfectly still, muscles locked, ears straining. Silence, not the cozy, sleepy silence from a few minutes ago. This was a held breath kind of quiet, like the whole house was listening with me. Neighbor, I told myself. People park on our street all the time. They come home late, they close their doors, they go inside. Delivery. Someone dropping off a package at the wrong house, realizing, and backing away. Random car turning around. Lost, confused, leaving. Any of those would come with follow-up sounds. Footsteps on concrete, a trunk opening, an engine revving and pulling away. The little beep of a lock being set. Nothing came. The heater was off. The fridge in the kitchen was in one of its quiet phases. The only sound I could pick out at first was the faint ticking of the wall clock in the hallway. Tiny, even clicks measuring out the distance between my heartbeats. Outside, far away, something rumbled. Either a train on the tracks on the other side of town, or the endless, low ocean of highway noise. It sounded like both at that distance, a constant, far-off presence that might as well have been on another planet. Our house creaked once, a soft, settling pop somewhere in the wall above my head. On any other night, I would not have noticed it. Tonight, it felt personal. The image of the sedan on the other side of that red light flashed behind my eyes. Then the earlier one parked in the back lot. Then, unhelpfully, the empty stretch of street we had driven down coming home, clean and harmless. I swung my legs over the side of the bed. The carpet under my feet was cool, the fibers bending and then springing back as my weight shifted. I tried to move quietly, but every tiny sound I made felt magnified. The slight creak of the mattress as I stood up, the whisper of my socks against the floor, the faint rustle of my shirt. The blinds over my window were closed, slats angled down. I could stand at the side and peek between them without moving them much. My heart was hammering so hard I could see my pulse in the side of my vision as I reached out. My fingers touched the cord. It rattled, just a tiny tap against the wall, and I froze, irrationally certain that whoever was out there would hear it. Tick, tick, tick. The hallway clock marked 3 more seconds. I slid 2 slats apart and put my eye to the gap. The street outside looked almost exactly the way it always did. Our yard, a small rectangle of dark grass. The skinny tree near the sidewalk, its branches bare and bony. The patch of light from the street lamp spilling onto the asphalt, making a pale oval that cut across the road. And across from our house, just past that oval, half in shadow under the tree, a black sedan. If I had seen it there on any random afternoon, I might not have thought twice. It was parked legally along the curb, nose pointed toward the end of the street. No doors open, no people standing outside it, just a car. But it was the right shape, 4 doors, low roofline. The kind of anonymous body that looks the same in every neighborhood. It was tucked just far enough under the tree that the street lamp's light broke on the windshield, leaving its interior a dark smear. As I watched, the lamp flickered. It did that sometimes. Little spasms when the ballast inside it got temperamental. The light dimmed for a moment, then flared brighter. The glare slid across the sedan's windshield, turning it into a blank white rectangle. For just a second, I saw myself reflected back in it. One ghost eye between 2 slats of my own blinds. Then the lamp steadied again. The car's interior dropped back into blackness. I could not see if the engine was on, but the car had that loaded stillness, that occupied feeling. It did not look abandoned. It looked like it was waiting. My mouth went dry. My tongue felt like it had been made of paper. I let the blinds fall back into place slowly, the slats whispering as they settled. In the sudden loss of the outside view, the inside of my room felt too close. The clock in the hallway kept ticking. Tick, tick, tick. The sound wormed its way under the door. My breathing seemed loud against it, so I tried to quiet that too, swallowing the noise down into my chest. I slipped out into the hallway. The boards under the carpet flexed in tiny, familiar ways under my weight. A faint sigh from one spot, a soft pop from another. The house knew how big I was. It had memorized my footsteps over years. Tonight, every little complaint it made felt like a tattletale. As I stepped into the hallway proper, my brother's door opened at the same time. He stuck his head out, hair sticking up, eyes wide and already focused on me. "You heard that too?" he whispered. The fact that he had not opened with a joke told me everything I needed to know about how scared he was. "Yeah," I whispered back. "Car doors." He nodded once. "2," he said, one after the other. "Yeah," I said again. We stood there for a moment, just breathing at each other, listening past each other to the house. No engine rumble filtering in through the walls. No voices outside. No footsteps on the sidewalk. "Do you think—" he started, then cut himself off. He did not need to finish. Both of us had already filled in the blank. A soft glow spilled down the stairs from the landing, outlining the banister in pale gold. Our parents must have turned off the TV and gone up a few minutes ago. The light from their room leaked under the gap of their door and down the stairwell, just enough to make everything on the first floor look like a half-remembered dream. We moved toward it together, in sync without talking about it. Our socks slid a little on the top step. The wood beneath the carpet gave a faint groan that sounded louder than it had any right to in my ears. Halfway down, I heard another sound. Not from outside, from the entryway. Our father's voice came first, low and sharp, like he was about to say something but bit it back. Then the faint click of something metal shifting, the chain on the door being lifted, I realized a second later. His shadow stretched long and thin across the wall at the bottom of the stairs. By the time we reached the last step, we could see him clearly. He was standing in the hallway in his t-shirt and pajama pants, one hand braced on the door frame, the other wrapped around the doorknob. His shoulders were tense, back straight in that way he only does when he is bracing for bad news. His gaze was fixed on the wood in front of him. He did not turn when he heard us, but I saw his jaw tighten. Someone had just knocked. Not a hard, pounding knock that rattled the frame. A firm, measured set of raps, spaced evenly apart, as if the person on the other side had practiced the exact cadence they wanted. The sound reverberated through the house, through my ribs, through every choice I had made that night, and settled somewhere deep in the pit of my stomach. My father squeezed the knob, knuckles pale. "Who is it?" he called, voice steady. On the other side of the door, a man answered. 5.2. Men on the porch. The entryway is not big. It never felt small before that night. There is a narrow strip of wall where we hang our coats, a little wooden table with a bowl for keys, and the rug my mom refuses to throw away, even though the pattern is worn almost flat. A small lamp sits on the table, casting a warm, yellowish puddle of light that only reaches a few feet in any direction. It turns the hallway into a tunnel, bright near the door, fading quickly into shadow where my brother and I stood. Family photos line the wall opposite. School pictures, graduation shots, a couple of group portraits taken in studios with fake backgrounds. The glass over them reflected the lamplight, throwing back a ghost version of our family, smiling and frozen, completely unaware of what the real versions were doing now. My father stood closest to the door. From the stairs, I could only see him in profile. Shoulders squared, jaw clenched, one hand on the knob, the other hanging at his side. It was the stance he used when dealing with pushy salesmen or neighbors with complaints. Calm, but edged. Behind him, my mother had come down just far enough to see. She was in her robe, hair loose, one hand gripping his upper arm. The skin around her eyes was tight, every line suddenly sharper. My brother and I hung back a few steps farther in the hallway, half in shadow. It felt like there was an invisible line we were not supposed to cross, some boundary between adult problem and kid problem, even though we were not kids anymore, and we both knew exactly who the men outside were asking for. My father's voice was steady when he called through the wood. "Who is it?" There was a brief pause. I heard the faint shift of weight on the porch boards, the wood creaking under someone's foot. Then a man's voice came back, muffled by the thickness of the door. "Hey, sir," he said, tone easy, practiced friendly. "Sorry to bother you so late. We're just looking for..." He said my name clearly, like he had rehearsed it. "We wanted to straighten something out real quick." The sound of my own name, spoken by a stranger at my front door, landed like a physical blow. My stomach turned over. Behind my ribs, my heart slammed once, hard, then started up faster. My mother's fingers tightened on my dad's arm. His shoulders lifted a fraction, then settled lower, as if he were sinking into the floor, bracing. "It's late," my father said, louder now, the firmness in his voice unmistakable. "Now what do you want with him?" The voice on the other side chuckled, like this was all a misunderstanding between reasonable men. "We met him earlier tonight, sir," he said. "Sold him a phone in the Duncan lot. Think there's been a little mix-up with the money. We were hoping he could come out 5 minutes so we can square up and we'll get out of your hair." Behind the muffling of the wood, his vowels flattened a bit. I recognized the cadence. It was Cap's voice, the one who had smiled in the lot and said, "We're not trying to rob you, man." My throat closed. My father did not glance back at me, but his voice sharpened. "Whatever business you think you have," he said, "can wait until morning. My son is not coming outside." A murmur from the second man, too quiet to make out. Then a scrape, like the edge of a shoe shifting or a hand brushing the door. A moment later, I heard a softer, more intimate sound. Something hard, metal or a ring, running lightly along the doorframe. A lazy, dragging touch. Cap's voice came again, a shade less friendly. "We drove all the way over here, sir," he said. "We know he's there. We can see the cars in the drive. This is just about money. We're not looking for trouble." The words were wrong in a way I could not even untangle. If it were really just about money, they would have argued back at the Dunkin'. They would have said no when I claimed I only had 180. They would not have followed us through half the town, repositioned through side streets, and now be standing on our porch, using my name like a hook. I slid along the hallway wall, keeping my back to the photos, until I was close enough to the front door to see out through the glass. The door had a small, textured window in the upper half, one of those decorative panels that distorts everything behind it into watery shapes. To the right of it, a narrow, clear pane ran the height of the frame, a sidelight that showed the porch more directly. I risked a glance. Two blurred silhouettes stood just beyond the threshold, one slightly in front of the other. As I looked, the nearer figure shifted his weight, and the brim of a baseball cap cut across the sidelight's view for a moment. It was like watching a memory reform itself. The backlot, the crooked smile, the cap pulled low. "It's them," I whispered. My voice came out dry. "It's the same guys." My brother did not ask how I knew. He was already staring at the door with a look that matched the ice crawling up my spine. "Listen," my father said, voice dropping into a register I recognized from the few times I had seen him truly angry. "I don't know how you got this address, but you need to leave. Now. You don't show up at someone's house in the middle of the night asking for their kid. You understand me?" Through the door, his words sounded bigger than they felt in the hallway. They filled the entryway, bounced off the family photos, made the lamp's light seem smaller in contrast. For a heartbeat, there was no reply. Then Hoodie's voice came, lower, closer to the wood. "We're just here to get what we're owed," he said. "Your boy shorted us. You don't want him learning the wrong lesson, right?" Guilt hit me like a stomach punch. My lie about the cash, the way I had said I only brought 180, flashed back in ugly detail. The way Cap had watched me for that extra beat. The way Hoodie's eyes had drifted over my car, measuring. They had believed me enough to take the deal, but not enough to let go. They had not followed us just because they were bored or mean. They had followed us because they believed I had something they wanted, something I had claimed not to have. "That's not true," my father snapped. His hand tightened on the knob. "The deal is done. You counted the money. You left. Now you're here at my home, harassing my family. You have 10 seconds to get off my porch before I call the police." My mother's grip on his arm moved up to his shoulder. I could see in the reflection of the glass that her other hand had gone to her chest, fingers pressing the fabric of her robe just above her heart. On the porch, something brushed the door again, a slow, deliberate sound, like a fingertip tracing the seam. "You really want to get cops involved over $40? Cap asked, and the ease was gone from his tone now. There was an edge under it, razor thin. "Yes," my father said. "If it gets you off my property, I do." I was already moving before he finished the sentence. The hallway felt twice as long as it usually did as I turned and hurried back toward my room. The carpet swallowed most of my footsteps, but I still winced at every creak in the floorboards. My heartbeat thundered in my ears, making the house sound like it was breathing. In my room, the Galaxy lay where I had dropped it on the bed when I got up. I snatched it up, the smooth back sliding under my fingers. The screen sprang to life, showing the lock screen. Time, date, the faint ghost of my new wallpaper. My thumb trembled as I unlocked it. The icon swam for a second before settling. I tapped the phone app. then punched in 3 numbers I had never actually dialed in my life outside of school drills. 911. The dial tone rang once, twice, then cut off. 911, what is your emergency? A woman's voice said in my ear. Hi, I whispered. My mouth felt like it was full of cotton. Hi, there are 2 men on my porch. They followed me home earlier. They're asking for money and they won't leave. Okay, slow down, she said. Her tone was calm, practiced. What is your address? I gave it to her. Saying the numbers out loud made me feel naked, like I was handing our location to both sides at once. Are they trying to get into the house? She asked. Not yet, I said. They're talking to my dad through the door. They found me through a sale. I bought a phone and... Okay, she repeated, grounding me. I'm sending officers to you now. Stay inside. Do not open the door. Are you somewhere safe in the house? In my room, I said. Upstairs. My dad's at the door. My mom's with him. My brother's in the hall. Stay on the line with me, she said. If anything changes, tell me right away. You're doing good. Her voice should have been comforting. Instead, it made the whole thing feel more real. Like saying the words out loud summoned gravity. From downstairs, Cap's voice came again, slightly louder, as if he had stepped closer to the wood. You called the cops, didn't you? He said. He did not raise his voice much, but it carried. The words slid up the stairs and into my room, into my ear, over the operator's reassurances. For a second, I could not tell if he was talking to my father through the door or to me. 5.3. Threats through wood. Yes, I whispered into the phone. He just said that, through the door. He asked if we called the cops. The operator stayed calm. Okay, listen to me. Officers are on their way. Do not open the door. Stay away from windows if you can. Is there more than 1 male outside? 2, I said. They followed us after a sale. They sold me a phone in a parking lot and then they followed us. Now they're here. Okay, she said again. I could hear keys clacking faintly on her end. The low murmur of other voices, the hum of a room that handled emergencies for a living. You did the right thing calling. Stay inside. Stay on the line. If you can do so safely, tell me what they're doing now. Their voices were muffled but still sharp enough to cut through the hall. We're not here to cause trouble, Cap said. We just want to talk to the kid who lied to us. 2 minutes, that's it. You're not talking to my son, my father said. I could hear the strain in his voice now, a tightness around the words. You don't show up at someone's home at midnight over a used phone. You're leaving. Right now. On the line, the operator's voice stayed smooth. Is that your father speaking? She asked. Yes, I answered. He's at the door. They're asking for me by name. They said I shorted them. The word felt bitter on my tongue. Okay, I need you to stay where you are, she said. You're upstairs, correct? Yes. Good. Stay upstairs. Don't go toward the door. Officers are en route. I need you to focus on staying safe and letting us handle them. Downstairs, the tone shifted. For a while, Cap had sounded like an annoyed customer trying to fix a billing issue. Now, the friendliness was gone. Sir, he said, and the word came out almost like a warning. We're not leaving without what we came for. Then you're going to have a problem when the police get here, my father replied. This conversation is over. A low mutter passed between the 2 men outside, too soft to pick out individual words. The house carried the sound as a hum through the wood and plaster. I could picture them shifting on the porch, glancing at each other, recalibrating. Then the doorknob rattled. Not a gentle test, not a polite knock. The metal turned sharply back and forth, clacking against its internal stop. The sound shot up my spine like ice water. My mother gasped. I heard the rustle of her robe as she stepped back, her bare feet whispering against the rug. "Do not touch my door," my father snapped. On the phone, the operator's tone tightened just a fraction. "What was that sound?" she asked. "They're trying the handle," I whispered. My voice shook. I put my free hand over my mouth, as if that would make me quieter for them and clearer for her at the same time. "Is the door locked?" she asked. "Yes," I said. I pictured the deadbolt, the chain, the thin strip of wood around it that I had never thought about much until now. "Yes, it's locked." "Good," she said. "Stay away from it. Officers are close. You're doing great. Just stay with me." A dull thump came next. Not a full-body slam, not the kind of hit that makes a house shudder, but a test. The sound of a shoulder or a hip pressed hard against the wood, like someone trying to feel out the strength of the frame. The photos on the wall rattled slightly. Glass clicked against nail heads. "Hey!" Hoodie's voice slipped through deeper and closer to the wood. "We said we just want to talk. Don't make this worse for your family. Open up." "You are making it worse," my father shot back. "You are trespassing and harassing my family. The police are on their way. You need to get off my property. Now." The floorboards under him creaked as he adjusted his stance. I could picture him from memory. One foot slightly back, shoulder angled, weight shifted just enough to be ready if something gave way. He was not a big man, not in the way movies show fathers in these moments, but he was steady. I heard my brother move down the hall. "Dad!" he hissed. "The bat!" The hall closet door opened with its familiar low squeak, the sound of hangers sliding, coats brushing each other. Then the dull wood-on-wood clunk of something long being lifted from where it leaned. We had owned that bat for years. It had started as a joke, a cheap aluminum thing my father bought at a yard sale, propped by the door with a just-in-case smile. It was the kind of object families point at and make light of when they talk about home security, something you imagine grabbing during a hypothetical break-in that never actually happens. Now, my brother's hands wrapped around it like it was the only thing between us and the dark outside. He handed it to my father. The weight of it shifted the way my dad was standing. I heard his bare feet reposition on the rug, gripping the fibers. The bat suddenly felt very small. The men outside started to talk over each other, their voices overlapping in the wood like a bad stereo. "Come on, man. You can't hide your own kid. We just want what we're owed. Don't make us do something we don't want to do." Their words bled into each other, a low, agitated buzz. Every once in a while, one phrase punched through clear. "We know he's right there. We saw your plates. We're not stupid." The operator's voice wove through mine, calm and clinical. "Stay upstairs," she reminded me. "They are trying to provoke a reaction. Do not open the door. Officers are being dispatched code 3, lights and sirens. You may hear them soon." "I can't just leave my dad down there," I said. The guilt was a physical thing now, pressing against my ribs. "This is my fault. I lied about the money. We're not focusing on blame right now," she said firmly. "You and your family are in a situation you did not ask for. The priority is staying alive. You're not going down there. Do you understand?" Her words pressed up against another voice in my head, one that sounded like my own. If you had just paid what they asked, if you had just walked away, if you had called earlier. Another thump hit the door, harder this time. The frame groaned. The chain rattled against its anchor point with a metallic chatter. My mother cried out, a short sound swallowed immediately by my father's voice. "Get back," he told her. "Back in the hall." The couch springs sighed as she moved. My brother's footsteps came up the first 2 stairs, then stopped, like he could not decide whether to obey the invisible line between levels or ignore it. On the porch, Cap's voice sharpened. "You think a lock is going to keep us out if we really want to come in?" he asked. "Try it," my father said. "See how that goes for you when the cops turn the corner." The air between the 2 sides of the door felt like it was tightening, stretched between threat and bravado. I pressed the phone harder to my ear. "They're hitting the door," I told the operator. "They're pushing on it. He's got the bat, but if they get in..." "Officers are almost there," she said. "Stay on the line. Is there a back exit? Anyone else in the house?" "No," I said. "Just us. Front door's the main way in. Back door's locked. They were messing with it earlier this month." The memory hit me as I said it. The backyard gate, the doorknob rattling, the sound of someone testing from a distance I had convinced myself was coincidence. The wall clock ticked over another minute. The sound felt vicious. Outside, someone laughed. Not loud, not genuinely amused. A short, breathy chuckle that carried a knife behind it. Then I heard the distinct sound of a hand sliding along the glass of the sidelight. It was a soft, squeaking drag, like a palm or fingers moving over the smooth surface. My imagination filled in the rest. Someone leaning in, face inches from the glass, trying to peer through the imperfections. The house held its breath with us. "Hey," Hoodie said, and his voice was closer than ever, right on the other side of the door now. "Listen to me." There was a pause. I could hear his breathing, slow, deliberate, loud enough to be carried through the wood. "Open this," he murmured, dropping his tone so low it almost did not sound human. "Or we make you." On the other side of that few inches of painted wood and cheap glass, I pictured his breath fogging the pain, spreading out in a soft cloud before fading. For the first time, the threat did not feel like a bluff or a metaphor. It felt like a promise. 6, 1. Waiting for the first crack. The operator's voice became the only steady thing in the house. "Officers are almost there," she said. "I need everyone to move away from the door. Stay together. Do not confront them directly." My father did not answer her. He was still in the entryway, shoulders squared, bat in hand, staring at the wood like he could hold it shut with his eyes. "Dad," my brother said, edging down 2 steps. "Come upstairs, please." For a moment, it looked like he was going to ignore us. His jaw worked, muscles jumping in his cheek. Then another heavy hit landed against the door, making the frame shudder. The chain rattled. Dust shook loose from the top molding in a tiny waterfall. He flinched. "Back up," my mother said, voice tight. "Please." He took 1 step back from the door, then another, moving in reverse down the hall, eyes never leaving the wood. The bat hung low but ready. Only when he reached the foot of the stairs did he look up at us. "Go," he said. "Bedroom. Now." We retreated up the stairs as a unit, one after another in a clumsy line. The wood groaned under our weight, each step up feeling slower than the last. I held the phone to my ear with one hand, the other trailing on the banister like I needed to prove it was real. Behind us, another thud hit the door, then another. The deadbolt clanged in its housing, protesting but holding. By the time we reached the top, my mother was breathing hard. She hustled into their bedroom, flipped on the light, then immediately turned it back down to a dimmer setting. like she did not want the house to look too awake from the street. We crowded in. Their room felt smaller with all four of us inside. The bed took up most of the space, the rest filled by dressers, piles of laundry, the soft clutter of people who never expected to have to treat it like a panic room. The curtains over the windows were half drawn, enough to block a direct line of sight from outside, but not enough to kill the thin gray wash of streetlight leaking in. My father stood by the door, propping it just barely open so he could see the top of the stairs through the crack. The bat rested against his leg. His fingers wrapped so tight around the handle his knuckles had gone pale. "Sir," the operator's voice said, tinny now on speaker, as I put the call on loud and set the phone on the dresser. "Is everyone together?" "Yes," my mother said. Her voice shook, but she got the word out. "We're in our bedroom. The door is open a little. My husband is watching the stairs." "Good," the operator said. "You're doing exactly what you should. Officers are very close. You may hear sirens soon. Do not go back downstairs." Another hit reverberated through the house. Even upstairs, away from the direct impact, we felt it. Through the floorboards, through the drywall, through the air. The sound came up the stairwell like a dull, angry heartbeat. The deadbolt rattled in its seat, the vibration traveling into the wall and up into the framing. "They're still hitting the door," I said, staring at the crack of hallway I could see. "They're trying to break it." "We've notified responding units that they may be attempting to force entry," the operator replied. I heard a faint crackle behind her words now, snippets of another voice coming through her headset. Dispatchers, officers, codes I could not parse. "They are approaching with lights and sirens. Stay away from the door and windows. If they get inside, go into a bathroom or closet, lock the door, and stay on the call." If they get inside, they're in our hallway, I thought, but did not say. The house was not big. The front door opened almost directly into the narrow entry, which fed into the living room and led straight to the stairs. Once they were past that wood, there would be maybe 10 feet between them and us. A scraping sound came from below. Not a hit this time. A slow drag, like something hard being pulled across the porch boards or along the siding. The hair on my arms lifted. My imagination supplied pictures. Someone running a knife along the frame, someone adjusting their footing, someone lining up the angle of something heavier. "Do you hear that?" my brother whispered. We all heard it. The house listened too. The old pipes seemed to go silent. The fridge downstairs chose that moment to shut off, taking its background hum with it. Even the heater held its breath. The only regular sound left was the ticking of the clock on my parents' wall and the faint crackle of police radio through the operator's end of the line. "We're not leaving without what we came for," Cap called. His voice was more muffled now, like he'd taken a step to the side of the door. "You gotta know that by now." "I already told you," my father shouted back, not leaving his spot by the bedroom door. "The deal is done. You come here again, you're going to jail. You understand me? You think the cops are gonna get here before we decide we're done being nice?" Hoodie called. His voice carried up the stairwell, flattening against the walls. "You want to bet your kids on that?" My mother made a small sound, halfway between a sob and a curse. She moved closer to my father, hand hovering near his arm again. He shifted, angling himself so his body was between her and the crack in the door. "Officers are almost on scene," the operator said. Her voice stayed calm, but I could hear the urgency underneath now. "I need you all to get away from that bedroom door. Get low to the ground. Bullets can go through wood and drywall. The word bullets hung in the room like a new smell. "We're not letting them in," my father said, as if that were the only variable that mattered. "I understand," the operator said, "but we need to plan for every possibility. Please move away from the doorway. Get down, away from where a straight line from the entry would be." We shuffled back a few feet. The carpet under my feet felt too soft, too normal. My brother sank down by the side of the bed, knees up, hands twisted together. My mother knelt next to him, one arm around his shoulders, the other pressed over her mouth. I stayed half-crouched near the dresser, eyes fixed on that narrow slice of hallway visible through the crack. The shadows shifted only with our movements, but my brain kept painting figures there. Men in caps and hoodies, silhouettes holding things I did not want to see. I thought about going downstairs, about walking past my father, opening the door myself, throwing the extra bills I had hidden onto the porch and begging them to leave. As if money would unwind everything that had led to this moment. As if their anger lived entirely in my lie. They would have come anyway, another part of me argued, the part that remembered how they had watched our car, how they had slipped through the streets after us. This isn't just about $40. This is about them enjoying what they're doing right now. If I hadn't lied, guilt started. If you hadn't met them at all, another voice cut in. The argument knotted in my chest, useless and looping, feeding on itself while reality pressed in from below. Another hit slammed into the door. This one was harder. Even upstairs, we heard wood splinter, a sharper crack under the dull thud. The deadbolt clanged, metal against metal, straining. "Sir," the operator said, "what just happened?" "They're hitting harder," I said. My voice felt like it belonged to someone else. "They're trying to break it." "There are officers on your street now," she said. "You may hear them at any moment. Stay down. Do not approach the door." As if on cue, a car passed through the intersection at the end of our block. Not a cruiser, just some late-night driver, tires humming over the cross street, engine droning. It rolled by completely unaware of what was happening one road over, of the men on our porch and the family upstairs holding its breath. The scraping sound came again, closer to the lock, this time. A pause. A whisper between the two men we could not make out. Then nothing for a heartbeat. The quiet that followed was worse than the pounding. My skin crawled with anticipation. Every muscle in my body tensed, waiting for the next blow, the next rattle of the deadbolt, the next thing that would tell me which way this was going to tip. "Stay low," the operator repeated. The faint hiss of radio traffic behind her grew louder for a second, then faded. "I want you all below window level if you can." We ducked further. My father stayed where he was, just off to the side of the doorway, one hand braced on the frame, the other still wrapped around the bat. His profile was a hard line, jaw clenched, eyes fixed on nothing we could see. "I'm not leaving this spot," he said quietly. He was close enough that if anything came up the stairs, he would be the first thing it saw. My heart pounded harder, faster, a drum roll with no crash. Then it came. Not a deafening blast. Not the cinematic roar of a gunshot with echo and ringing ears. The sound that broke the moment was quicker, sharper, almost small. A flat, unnatural pop, like the loudest stapler you have ever heard going off in a narrow hallway. For a split second, it did not register as a gunshot. It was just a wrong sound, a mechanical cough that did not belong in a house. Then the doorframe downstairs exploded in a puff of splinters. We heard the wood crack, a high, ragged sound layered over the lower thump of impact. A chunk of molding snapped off and clattered to the floor. The house seemed to flinch, every board and nail shuddering in sympathy. My mother screamed. My brother ducked instinctively, arms over his head. On the phone, the operator's voice jumped an octave. "Was that a gunshot?" she demanded, suddenly sharp. A new, circular hole had just been punched through our front door, right below where the deadbolt sat. 6.2 inches from my father's face. For a second after the pop, the world moved like it was underwater. The sound itself was small compared to what I had always imagined a gunshot to be. No echoing boom, no movie-style thunderclap. Just that sharp, flat crack, and then a rush of reactions that were somehow louder than the shot. The front door took the hit like a living thing. Splinters burst from the frame in a spray, thin slivers of wood that caught the lamplight as they flew. In my mind, they slowed down, drifting in the air like a handful of broken toothpicks tossed into zero gravity. Bits of paint and dust puffed out in a cloud, turning the yellow light in the entryway into a dirty halo. My mother flinched away from the sound, both hands flying up to cover her face. A choked, tearing sob ripped out of her, more startled than conscious. My father reacted differently. Even from the top of the stairs, I saw his body jerk, then lunge sideways, instinct taking over before thought. He shoved my mother and brother back with his free arm, pushing them toward the bedroom. The bat clattered against the wall as he lost his grip on it for a second, metal ringing dully against drywall before it dropped to the carpet with a heavy, muffled thud. I did not realize I had made a sound until I heard it, somewhere between a gasp and a cry, high and ugly. For a second, I thought it was my brother, but his mouth was open and nothing was coming out. The noise was mine. The ringing in my ears was not as dramatic as in movies either. It was more like someone had stuffed wool into them. Sounds came through, but they were muted, distant, the ticking of the clock, the operator's voice on speaker, my mother's ragged breathing. All of it layered under a high, thin whine. From downstairs, the door gave a long, low groan. There was a new hole in it. I could not see it directly from where I was, but I imagined it as clearly as if I were staring at it. An ugly, black-rimmed circle punched through just below the deadbolt, surrounded by jagged edges of torn wood. Thin wisps of smoke would be curling from it, swallowing into the warmer air of the house. The smell of burnt wood and hot metal mixing into something bitter. On the phone, the operator's voice snapped sharp. "Was that a gunshot?" she demanded again. "Yes," I said. My own voice barely sounded like mine. "Yes, they fired a gun. They shot through the door." Her tone changed instantly, cooling and hardening like molten metal dropped into water. "Okay, officers have been updated. They know shots have been fired. I need you to move away from all doors and windows. Find a room you can lock from the inside. Stay low to the ground. Do not approach them." "We're in the bedroom," my mother said, voice shaking. "We can lock—" My father cut across her. "I'm not turning my back on that hallway," he said. He had already scooped the bat back up, fingers re-wrapping around the handle. His chest rose and fell fast, but his feet stayed planted. "Sir, you need to get away from the line of fire," the operator insisted, her voice coming thin and urgent through the speaker. Behind her, radio chatter crackled louder, short bursts of code and clipped words I could not understand. Outside, Cap's voice came again, louder now that adrenaline had stripped away any pretense of politeness. "That was a warning shot!" he yelled. The words slammed through the wood. "Next one's through the lock. Open this door and we talk like men, or we open it our way. If you shoot that lock, you're going to prison," my father shouted back. even as he edged further behind the bedroom doorframe. "You fire one more time, you're done. Cops are already on their way." I could hear, really hear now, how close that bullet had come. The angle from the porch to the door, the height of the hole relative to the deadbolt. It all lined up roughly with where my father's head had been when he'd stood in the entry, yelling through the wood. If he had stayed where he was, if he had leaned forward, if he had opened the door even an inch. That thought did something strange to my vision. For a moment, everything tunneled. The edges of the room blurred, darkening, while the center sharpened. My father's profile, the grip of the bat in his hands, the crack in the bedroom door showing a slice of hallway. In another life, in another version of this night, that bullet had gone 3 inches higher. In that version, he was on the floor downstairs, and the sound my mother was making was a different kind of scream. "Get back," I croaked. "Please, Dad, get back from the door." He glanced at me just once. The look on his face was something I had never seen before. Fear and fury layered together so tightly they became something new. It was not stubbornness keeping him there. It was calculation. He was trying to be the barrier. "If they get through, they come up these stairs," he said. "They're not getting past me to you. Back up. Get behind the bed." "We're not leaving you," my mother said. Her knees were already on the carpet next to the bed, one arm around my brother, but she twisted toward him with a desperate kind of defiance. "You are," he said, voice low but steel hard. "Get!" The operator broke in, louder. "Sir, more units are almost on scene. You should hear sirens any moment. Get away from any direct line with the entry. They have already fired once. We don't want anyone in that hallway if they decide to fire again." As if on cue, far off at first, a faint wail rose above the background hum of the night. It started as a distant high note just at the edge of hearing. Then it grew, swelling in waves. Sirens, more than one, overlapping each other. The sound bounced off houses and low buildings blocks away, warping and stretching as it moved closer. For a split second, relief stabbed through the fear. They were coming. Real people, with real training and real guns, and the authority to drag these men off our porch. The nightmare was no longer just between us and them. It had other witnesses now. The men outside heard it too. "Shit," someone muttered on the porch. Hoodie from the tone. The house relayed the sound of their movement, a quick scuff, a shift of weight, the faint creak of the boards. For a second it sounded like they might be stepping back, preparing to bolt. Then another shot cracked. This one sounded different. Angled, more distant from the door. The pop ricocheted not through the entry frame but along the side of the house. A sharp report followed by a strange, muffled impact. The wall on the far side of my parents' room shuddered. It was not a direct hit in here. More like the structure had felt the vibration and passed it along. A picture on their dresser rattled, leaning a fraction. Somewhere downstairs, a glass clinked in a cabinet. "Another shot fired," I gasped into the phone. "Side of the house, they're just shooting now." "Units are on your street," the operator said. I could hear it in her voice now too. That pivot from theoretical to immediate. "They're there, stay down. Do not go out. Do not approach the windows." Through the thin slit of the bedroom curtains, I saw a wash of blue-red light strobe briefly across the ceiling. It flickered in time with the sirens, painting the room in colors that did not belong in a place of sleep. From the porch came the rapid thud of footsteps, 2 sets, heavy and hurried. The boards complained once, then went quiet. "They're running," my brother whispered. He was right. The third shot that I had been bracing for never came. Instead, we heard the faint roar of an engine revving up hard, tires skidding just enough to squeal, and then the accelerated growl of a car tearing away from the curb. The siren swelled, then bent, turning as the patrol cars adjusted their approach. In the sudden collision of sounds, the sirens, the fleeing engine, the operator's voice, my mother's shaky breathing, the hole in our door downstairs smoked quietly to itself, a black eye in the wood inches from where my father's face had been. 6.3, red and blue on the walls. When the sirens finally hit our street, it was like someone turned the volume of the universe back on all at once. Up until then, the noise had been distant and warped, bouncing between houses, easy to pretend was happening somewhere else. Then the first cruiser swung around the corner, and the sound snapped into focus, loud, close, impossible to ignore. Tires squealed as a patrol car braked hard in front of our house. Another pulled up half on the curb a few yards back, engine roaring, then dropping into a throaty idle. Doors flew open with heavy, authoritative thunks that sounded nothing like the doors we had heard outside earlier. "Police, don't move!" someone shouted, voice sharp and amplified by adrenaline and the street. The operator's voice in our bedroom overlapped with it, tinny but insistent. "They're on scene. Stay inside. Do not go to the door until an officer instructs you to. Do you understand?" "Yes," my mother said. She was clutching my brother's shoulder so tightly her knuckles were white. I edged closer to the window despite everything and tipped one slat of the blinds with a fingertip, just enough to peek out. The street that had been empty 10 minutes ago now looked like something out of a cop show. Red and blue lights strobed across siding and parked cars, turning our quiet block into a flickering aquarium of color. Shadows of officers moved fast and precise over the lawns and driveway, dark shapes with reflective vests and drawn weapons. The black sedan that had been across from our house was now nose to nose with the nearest cruiser, boxed in at an angle. Its sleek, anonymous body looked smaller between the bulkier shapes of the patrol cars, like a regular piece of a puzzle suddenly surrounded by all the corner pieces at once. "Hands where I can see 'em!" an officer yelled. "Now, get out of the car, slowly!" I could not see the men clearly from this angle, just flashes. A door opening, an arm raised, a leg stepping out. The harsh white of a flashlight beam cut across everything, slicing through the color wash with a colder, harder light. Police radios crackled non-stop now, overlapping fragments drifting up to us. Two suspects. Shots fired, front entry and east side. Weapon visible in right hand. Advise, drop it. Another officer shouted, voice so loud it made my stomach clench. Drop the gun, now! A second flashlight beam drilled into the space between cars. I held my breath so long my lungs burned. Then the flat clatter of metal on pavement. Handcuffs have a very specific sound. I had never realized that before. There was the scuffle of shoes, then that tiny, decisive metallic click-click as the cuffs ratcheted closed around wrists. It was weird how small the sound was compared to all the shouting that led up to it. Final, but quiet. "Don't move. Do not move," an officer repeated, even though the clicks said the men weren't going anywhere. "Sirens are stopping outside your location," the operator said, still in our room, as if narrating a live broadcast. "Officers have at least one suspect detained. Stay inside until they knock and identify themselves. You're doing great. Just a little longer." Another door slammed from below. Heavier, official. More feet pounded across our front lawn now, boots thudding on the grass and then on the porch boards. Someone's radio hissed as they moved, a burst of static and clipped phrases leaking through the wood. A new knock came at the front door. It was nothing like the one we had heard earlier. This one was firm, controlled, 3 even raps that carried authority instead of hunger. "Police!" a voice called. "It's the police! Do not open yet! We're outside your door!" My father exhaled a breath I did not know he had been holding. He straightened a little, then looked back at us. "Stay here," he said. "I'm going to them. Do not come downstairs until I say so." My mother reached for him, fingers brushing his arm. "Be careful," she whispered, as if the danger were still symmetrical. He nodded once, then stepped into the hallway. I listened to his feet on the stairs, each tread an echo of earlier trips in our lives that had led from couch to bed, from dinner to sleep, but never like this. I stayed where I was supposed to, mostly. I crept to the bedroom doorway and leaned just far enough into the hall to see down the stairs without being in full view. At the bottom, my father shouted, "Who is it?" Even though he already knew. "County police, sir," a voice replied immediately. "We have 2 individuals detained outside. We need to check on your family. Step away from the door, and we'll have you unlock it on my count." There was a brief rustle as he obeyed, then the soft slide of the chain being lifted, the heavier chunk of the deadbolt turning, and finally the slow, careful squeak of our front door opening, the entryway flooded with colder light. They must have had flashlights as well as the porch lamp and the spill from the cruisers. The brightness cut through the stairwell, turning the worn carpet and old photos into something stark. My father's body blocked most of the view, but I glimpsed legs in dark uniforms just beyond the threshold, reflective stripes flashing. "It's clear," someone said outside. "Weapon recovered. One on the ground, one against the car." My father stepped back to let them in. 2 officers crossed the threshold. One was tall and broad-shouldered, his vest and belt making him look even bigger in our narrow hall. The other was shorter, but moved with a coiled, efficient energy, eyes scanning the corners like he expected something else to jump out. They brought the outside with them. Cold air, the smell of exhaust and winter, and something faintly metallic that I knew, without wanting to, was gunpowder. The taller one glanced up the stairs and saw us huddled at the top. "You folks okay?" he called, voice softer now that the adrenaline spike had passed. "Everyone uninjured?" "We're okay," I said before my parents could. My voice came out thin. They shot through the door." The shorter officer turned toward the entry, shining his flashlight on the place the shot had gone through. Seeing it was worse than imagining it. The hole was small, smaller than my thumb, black-rimmed, with a spray of splintered wood erupting from it in a rough halo. The deadbolt sat just above it, the metal scraped and gouged where the bullet had barely missed the housing. "Jesus," the officer muttered. He ran his gloved fingers lightly over the wound in the wood, following the line inward. Then he straightened and looked up at my father. "You were standing right here?" he asked, tapping the floor with his boot. "Closer," my father said. His voice was steadier than his hands. I moved back right before it hit. The officer let out a low breath and shook his head. "You're lucky," he said. "An inch or 2 difference and we'd be having a very different conversation right now." My mother made a broken sound behind me. My brother stared at the hole like it could still do something. Shame and relief crashed into each other inside my chest. Relief that they were cuffed, that there were uniforms between us and the porch now, that the bullet had chosen wood instead of flesh. Shame that the whole chain of events had started with a lie about $40 and my refusal to call sooner when my gut told me something was wrong. It was not that simple. I knew that. They had made their own decisions, worse ones, more deliberate. They had chosen to follow, to threaten, to draw a gun in a neighborhood where kids left their bikes on lawns. But telling myself that did not erase the image of my father's head where that hole was now. Another officer stepped into the entryway briefly to confer with the first two. Radio pressed to his shoulder. "Both in cuffs," he said. "One had the firearm, registered to an uncle, supposedly. We'll sort that out down at the station." "What were they saying to you?" the shorter officer asked my dad. "Before they fired." "Wanted my son to come out and talk," my father said. "Said he shorted them on a sale. Said they weren't leaving without what they came for." The officer's jaw tightened. "They won't be going anywhere for a while," he said. "We'll need statements from all of you once things settle down a bit." He turned, catching my eye at the top of the stairs. There was kindness there, but also something else. A professional distance. The look of someone who had seen too many variations of this same script. "Take a minute," he said. "Breathe. You're safe right now." Safe. The word felt weird in the air, like a gum wrapper caught in a draft. Light, flimsy, floating over a floor that still smelled like burned wood. As my parents started answering more questions, I drifted back toward the bedroom window and peeled the blinds apart again. Outside, under the harsh white of the cruiser spotlights and the spinning red-blue from the bars, the black sedan sat at the end of our walkway. With the drama stripped away, the yelling, the pounding, the unseen threat inside it, it looked painfully ordinary. Just another mid-2000s four-door, paint dinged in a few places, one hubcap a slightly different shade. If you blurred your eyes a little, it could have been any neighbor's car. The kind of vehicle you pass on your street 100 times without registering. The kind that shows up in different driveways over the years and never means anything. An officer walked past it, his flashlight beam cutting across the hood. The light revealed nothing special about it. No monstrous shape, no horror movie twist. Just metal and glass and tires. That was the part that lodged under my skin. It was not just our block this could happen on. Not just our house. Not just my stupid lie or my unlucky listing. It was any street with a porch light. Any family with a deadbolt and a worn rug. Any kid scrolling for a good deal in the glow of a screen. Under the flashing lights, the sedan looked like it belonged to the neighborhood. And that, more than the bullet hole or the sirens, was the thing that would not let me sleep for a long time afterward. 7.1, the day after is not the end. Morning did not arrive the way it usually does. There was no slow, cozy slide from sleep into light. I do not remember ever really falling asleep at all. Just a long, gritty stretch of hours where my body lay horizontal and my brain replayed the night in chopped-up loops. The red light, the headlights, the door, the hole. When the sun finally started pushing gray into the blinds, it felt less like morning and more like the universe turning the overhead lights on after a disaster. From the street, our house looked almost normal again. The patrol cars had left a little before dawn. Their tire tracks still marked the wet spots on the asphalt. But if you did not know to look, you would not see them. The neighbors' houses faced ours with their same blank expressions. The tree in our yard stood where it always had, branches clawing at the pale sky. Up close, the damage was smaller than it had felt in the moment. The bullet hole in the door, seen in daylight, looked almost like a knot in the wood. It was low, near the deadbolt, a dark circle the size of a fingertip with a halo of rough splinters around it. Someone who did not know might have mistaken it for a manufacturing flaw or an old filled screw hole. We knew better. Every time my eyes drifted past the door, they locked on that spot. My brain filled in the missing parts. The puff of smoke, the imagined line the bullet had taken, the negative space where my father's head had not been because he had moved. My mother stood in the kitchen at 3 a.m, long before the sky brightened, making coffee in the dark. She did not turn on the main overhead light, just the small one over the stove. It washed the counters and floor in a soft, yellowish rectangle, leaving the rest of the house in shadow. The coffee machine sputtered and dripped, each drop ridiculously loud in the silence, like the house had nothing else to listen to. I sat at the table, hands wrapped around a mug I was not drinking from. My brother was across from me, shoulders hunched, the new phone lying on the table between us like an accusation. "Anyone sleep?" my mother asked without looking up. Her voice had that frayed edge from too many hours awake. My father, standing near the back door, shook his head. "Not really," he said. Closed my eyes. That is about it. Every time a car went by outside, we all froze. It did not matter if it was just someone heading to an early shift or a neighbor starting their day. The low rumble of an engine approaching made our hearts kick, just for a second, until it passed the house and drifted away. The sound of tires over the little seam in the road out front, thump, hiss, had become a metronome for our fear. My brother had the galaxy in front of him, but he was not touching it. He stared at it like it was something on a slide in a lab, an object you observe from a distance because it is dangerous to handle directly. The screen reflected a faint sliver of the stove light, a little crescent of shine on the black glass. "You gonna keep it?" he asked eventually, not taking his eyes off it. I had been avoiding that question. The idea of picking it up and putting it in my pocket, of carrying it like any other phone, made my stomach twist. It was not just plastic and silicon and circuits anymore. It was a map of the last 12 hours, a record of every bad choice that had put 2 men on our porch with a gun. "I think I am going to sell it," I said slowly. Not like that. Not to a random guy in a parking lot. At an actual store. One of those resale places. Just trade it in, get whatever they give me. "You will lose money," my father said. "I know," I said. "Good. I should." The words surprised me a little as they came out, but they felt right. Like a small offering to some invisible scale I desperately wanted to tip back into balance. No one argued. For a while, the only sound was the coffee machine finishing its cycle, the final few gurgles and sighs as it had nothing left to give. My mother poured cups mechanically, handing them out like medicine. The smell of coffee filled the kitchen, familiar and weirdly out of place at this hour. I took a sip. It burned my tongue, but I welcomed the sting. It was a clean pain, different from the tangled ache in my chest. Sitting there, I traced the chain of events in my head, like a route on a GPS. Clicking on the listing in a dark room, thinking, good price. Messaging Mike S., and feeling that little buzz of satisfaction when he replied instantly. Agreeing to a 10:30 p.m. meet in the back lot because it was less crowded. Folding more cash into my pocket than I planned to admit having. Standing under a flickering light and saying, I only brought $180, when my fingers were resting on bills that made that a lie. Driving around in circles instead of calling. Blowing the red light instead of stopping. Choosing to believe over and over again that nothing truly bad would happen as long as the story still felt like it belonged to someone else. Every step had felt small, reasonable, easy to justify in the moment. None of them felt small now. My brother nudged the phone with one finger, pushing it closer to me. "You should factory reset it before you trade it in," he said. "Wipe everything. Start clean." I stared at the dark screen. "I will," I said. "Not now." He watched me for a moment, then looked away. The shadows under his eyes made him look older. We had both grown up a little in a few hours, and not in any of the ways people mean when they say that as a compliment. The guilt that had been simmering in the back of my throat all night finally boiled up. "I lied," I said suddenly. Both of them looked at me. My father leaned his hip against the counter. My mother's hand paused halfway to her cup. "About what?" my brother asked, even though I could see in his face he already knew. "At the lot," I said, when they asked for more. I told them I only brought 180. He frowned. "Yeah, we were there. So?" "I had more," I said. 250? Maybe more, I do not even remember exactly now. I had it in my pocket. I did not want to give them more than the listing. He stared at me for a long second. Then his mouth twisted into something that was not quite a smile and not quite a grimace. "You idiot," he said softly. "I know," I said. "You could have given them the extra 40, and we could have gone home and watched stupid videos instead," he went on, voice tipping toward anger. "No car chase, no red lights, no holes in the door." My chest tightened. "I know. But," he added, and the word dropped into the space between us like a stone. "They followed us before they knew for sure. They followed us even after you gave them what you said you had. They came here. They brought a gun. That is not about $40. He rubbed his eyes with the heels of his hands. When he dropped them, there was a hollow humor in his expression. "So you are an idiot," he said. "But they are something worse." I let out a breath I had not realized I was holding. Shame did not evaporate. It settled, heavier but more defined. Less like poison, more like weight. "Still," I said, "if I had not lied, if you had not lied, they might still have decided they wanted more," he cut in. "Or they might have decided they liked the way it felt to make someone drive scared. Or they might have just been looking for a house anyway. You do not get to give yourself that much power over their crazy." He was trying to make me feel better, in his own messed up way. It did not work exactly, but it untied one of the knots. Outside, a car drove past. We all went still for a second, heads tilting, bodies listening. The engine sound hummed by, receded, turned the corner somewhere else. The coffee machine clicked as it powered off, leaving the kitchen in a hush broken only by soft footsteps on tile and the too loud ticking of the clock on the wall. Morning light crept across the floor, inching toward the threshold. The day after had started, but nothing about it felt like an ending. 7.2, living with the bullet hole. I still live in this house. People always pause when I say that, like they are waiting for the punchline. Like I am going to add, "Just kidding, we moved the next month," or "We sold it and never looked back." But I did not move. My parents did not move. The front door is still the same. The rug is the same. The little lamp on the entry table still casts that small pool of light at night, and the bullet hole is still there. You would be surprised how small it looks, seeing it now. In morning light, it is easy to mistake it for one of those knots in the wood that builders cut around and pretend are character. A dark, irregular circle just below the deadbolt, with a faint starburst of torn grain around it if you look close. If you do not know what it is, you might not see it at all. I do not have that luxury. It is part of my nightly ritual now. As much as brushing my teeth or setting an alarm, I lock the deadbolt, and then, without even thinking, my fingers drift a few inches down and press lightly against that rough edge. I can tell where the paint flakes away under my thumb, how the wood dips just slightly inward. The house's one permanent flinch. I check the lock twice, sometimes 3 times. It is not about the mechanics. I know how deadbolts work. I know how solid the frame is, how the cops checked it afterward and told us the door had held better than they expected. It is about the little jolt of reassurance that runs through me each time I feel the bolt seated, the way the knob resists when I twist it. Click. Secure. My hand finds the hole almost automatically after that. The first night, it was a deliberate touch, like you might touch a bruise just to see if it is still tender. Now it is almost unconscious. I stand there in the half-dark, fingertips resting on the scar in the wood, listening to the street the way some people listen to the ocean. The sounds I grew up with have not changed much. Far-off traffic hums on the main road like it always has. That low, constant rush that never fully stops. The neighbor's dog still barks at ghosts and raccoons with no sense of proportion. Every so often, a late-night engine comes down our block, someone coming home from a shift or leaving for one. The difference is in how my brain catalogs them now. Where before the sound of a car passing was just background, something the house absorbed and ignored. Now my mind tags each one automatically. Type of engine, speed, direction. I can tell without looking whether it is a truck taking the corner too fast, a small car inching slowly as if looking for an address, or something sitting a little too long at the stop sign. I do not run to the window every time. That is what people imagine when they hear paranoid. Someone peeking through blinds every 5 minutes. It is not like that. It is quieter, more mundane. My body clocks things my conscious mind pretends not to notice. A car stops out front and idles too long. The hairs on my arms stand up, even if my eyes stay on my book. 2 doors slam somewhere on the street at once. My heart stutters, then forces itself into a steady rhythm once I hear voices laughing, footsteps going up a neighbor's walkway instead of ours. We never patched the hole. We could have. Insurance would have covered a new door, maybe even a nicer one. The cop who came by later with follow-up paperwork asked if we were planning to replace it, like it was the obvious next step. My father said no. He did not say it out of some macho impulse to wear it as a badge of honor. It was more complicated than that. Patching it felt, to him, like pretending it had not happened. Replacing the door felt like letting the story end on someone else's terms, like we would be smoothing over something that had nearly erased him. So the house keeps its scar. Visitors do not always notice. When they do, there is a beat, an almost physical pause. When they reach toward it as if to touch, then think better of it. We tell the story in a condensed version now, when we have to. No one wants the full runtime. They want the headline edition. Guy buys phone, sellers follow him, gunshot, cops, the end. The actual ending is less cinematic. Horror feels different when it gets processed after the fact. There were court dates. That is a kind of horror they do not make movies about very often. You sit in a room that smells like old paper and recirculated air while men in cheap suits talk about charges and prior history and plea deals. You hear words like reckless endangerment and aggravated assault and unlawful discharge of a firearm applied to your front door, your father's body, your stupid late-night purchase. We gave statements, again and again, first when the uniforms were still in our hallway, then later with detectives in polos, then months afterward in a different building entirely. Each time, the story got a little smoother in my mouth, the edges sanded off. It never sounded like the night itself. Bureaucracy cannot catch the way the house smelled after the shot, or the way the operator's voice climbed half an octave when she heard it. We wrote victim impact statements. Mine sat on my laptop for days, cursor blinking on a line where I was supposed to describe how this incident affected me. Every time I hear 2 car doors slam at night, I leave my body for a second felt like the truest answer. I did not write that. I wrote something about anxiety and difficulty sleeping and loss of trust. Words that sounded like they belonged in a file. They went to jail, or prison, or some combination. The system has layers and jargon that do not really matter at 1 a.m. when you are still lying awake, listening to a car turn around at the end of your block. People assume the fear lives in those legal outcomes. It does not. Fear lives in sounds. In the little creak the porch makes when someone steps on the first board. In the difference between a package being dropped off at 6 p.m. and a knock coming at midnight. In the specific way a car's engine drops when it pulls up to a curb and shifts into park. Paperwork ends up in folders. Audio does not. It loops. Sometimes, late at night, when the house is as quiet as it ever gets, and my hand is resting lightly on that small, charred circle in the door, I think about all the tiny decisions that put that hole there. Not just mine, not just theirs. The whole web. And I think about how common the first ones are. Opening an app, scrolling through listings while your room is lit more by screen than lamp. Seeing a deal that feels like you caught the world asleep for a second. If you have ever messaged a stranger for a price that seemed too good to be true, if you have ever driven to a parking lot at night thinking, it is just a phone, just a laptop, just a quick meet, you already live closer to this story than you want to admit. 7.3, the sound you might hear after this story. If this is being read to you on YouTube right now, then technically, we are both in the same room. Not literally. Not in the way that lawyers or cops or neighbors would recognize. But my voice, through whoever is reading this, and your ears are sharing a little pocket of time together. I cannot see you, but I can guess a few things. Maybe you are in bed, lying on your side, phone propped up on a pillow or leaning against a water bottle, blue light painting the ceiling, one earbud in, the other hanging loose because you might fall asleep to this. You can see the crack of your bedroom door from where you are, that strip of darker hallway beyond. Maybe you are in your car, parked in a quiet lot because you like listening to scary stories with the engine off and the world muted. Dash lights glowing dim orange, windshield showing you a reflection of your own face, eyes a little too wide as the story hits the parts that feel too real. Maybe the nearest streetlight throws just enough light into the car that you could see someone walk up if they really wanted to. Maybe you are in your kitchen, dishes in the sink, phone on the counter, volume turned up just enough to hear over the refrigerator hum. You are half listening while you wipe down the stove or make something to eat. You tell yourself you do not really get scared by this stuff. It is background noise. It is just voices and music and someone else's stress. However you are listening, I know this much. Your house, or your car, or your apartment has its own sounds. It has the way your fridge cycles on with a low, steady growl, then clicks off into a silence you usually do not notice. The way your heater kicks in with a soft, rushing sigh through the vents, making the walls expand and contract in tiny, complaining pops. The way the pipes knock once in a while for no good reason, like someone tapping from inside the wall. You might hear your neighbor's door sometimes, faintly, like a distant echo, or the elevator in your building whining past your floor, or the old stair outside your unit that creaks when someone puts their weight on it, even if they keep their feet light. Those sounds have been there longer than this story. They will be there after it ends. For a long time, I thought horror lived in the big moments. The chase, the shouting, the shot. The times when you know, beyond a doubt, that you are in danger. What I learned is that real horror likes to hide in the smaller things. In the moment, you type a message to a stranger saying, "Is this still available?" In the half second, you hesitate before pressing send, and that tiny pulse of relief when the reply pops up instantly. "Yeah, still got it." In the way you tell yourself it is fine to meet late in a corner of a parking lot, because it is still public, and these apps have ratings, and you need the deal. The worst thing I did that night was not blow the red light. It was not even lying about how much cash I had. The worst thing I did, the part that still makes my skin crawl when I think about it, is that I made it easy for two strangers with a car and a bad idea to draw a line from a username on a screen to the front door of the house where my family sleeps. I showed them the way, piece by piece. They watched me pull out of the lot. They watched which direction I turned. When I ducked into side streets, they learned the shape of my neighborhood. When I slowed at certain corners or hesitated at certain turns, they learned my habits. When I chose not to call for help until they were already at my house, I gave them time to finish the route. I did not do it on purpose. That does not change the map. Right now, you probably know all your own shortcuts. The back way home that avoids the worst lights. The turn you always make on autopilot even if you are not really looking. The way your building looks from the street when your windows are lit and your curtains are open. You know the kinds of things you search online when you are bored and broke. Cheap used phone near me. Free couch. Laptop? Must go tonight. You know how tempting it is to click message seller when the price looks like a typo and the description says need gone ASAP. Most of the time, it is fine. Most of the time, it is exactly what it looks like. Someone else trying to get rid of something. An exchange in a parking lot that ends with a handshake or a nod, and everyone going home a little better off. But the truth no one likes to sit with is that it only takes one time for it not to be fine. One listing that is not just a listing. One username that is not just a bored guy flipping old phones. One night where you are tired and a little desperate, and you ignore the part of yourself that says, "This feels off," because the price is good and you are sure you will be the exception. After that night, every car door that slammed outside our house made my body tense. I do not mean for a week or two. I mean for months, years. Sometimes it still happens. I will be sitting in the living room, TV on low, the bullet hole a dark dot near my shoulder, and I will hear a car slow outside. Tires crunch lightly over the seam in the road, engine drop as it shifts into park. One door opens, closes, another follows, and just a fraction of a beat behind. Two doors. That sound. It is a specific rhythm now, burned into my bones. Thunk. Thunk. My hand will tighten around whatever I am holding. My ears will strain for the next part. A voice. Footsteps on the walkway. The porch boards creaking. The knock. Usually, none of that comes. Usually, the doors I am hearing belong to neighbors, or to a delivery driver, or to some teenager sitting in a car scrolling their own feed before going inside. Usually. But the space between those two thunks and the proof that it is not my problem this time, that space is where the story lives now. The whole point of telling you all of this, of dragging you through the back lot and the red light and the hole in my door, is not to make you afraid of ever buying anything used again. It is to remind you that the scariest part of what happened to us was not the strangers on the porch, or the gun, or even the bullet. Those were all terrible, but they came after. The scariest part was realizing that, without meaning to, I had made a path for them. I had helped draw the arrow that pointed straight to the place where we were most vulnerable. So here is the part where I stop talking at you and start talking to you. Tonight, when this video ends and you close your app or lock your screen, your house will go back to being itself. Your fridge will hum. Your heater will cycle. Your pipes will knock for no good reason. Cars will pass outside, and sometimes they will stop, and sometimes they will not. If, sometime in the next few nights, you hear a car slow down outside your house, and you hear two doors close, almost at the same time, you will think of this story. You will notice that you are holding your breath. You will listen for the knock you hope does not come. Most likely, it will be nothing. A neighbor, a delivery, a ride share, life doing what it always does. Just remember this: when your heart is beating harder for no obvious reason, sometimes the scariest part is not who is on the porch. It is knowing you are the one who showed them how to find it.